Good morning. Want to call to order the Project Oversight Committee meeting. It's Friday, August 9th, approximately 8:40 a.m. Roll call. I'm present. Vice Chair Michelle Bruin-Graber.
Present.
Member Anthony Alto.
Present.
Member Robert Yu.
Present.
And want to also note the presence of Board Chair Colleen Hanabusa.
Chair, I'm here as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. And we also have Board Member Natalie Iwasa online. We want to start off with item number 2, public testimony. Do we have anybody present or online that would like to present testimony to the POC? And Cindy? Beverly, a testifier?
No, she
No?
didn't wish to testify, and we've had no written testimony, Chair.
Okay, all right, thank you. Item number 3, June monthly progress report, Vance and Corey.
Morning.
Morning.
Back to the Heart Project Director. If we could go to page 5, and I will go through the usual summary of the overall key items. Starting with the first item, procurement, CCGS. So we did receive proposals on July 23rd. We are currently evaluating, and being that it is an open procurement, there's not much that I can say in regards to those proposals, but we are still tracking August 23rd for notice of award and NTP in mid-September. Moving on to design and construction, CCR 4. Work continues along Dillingham. The one item that we've made progress on is the 138 kV connections at the Ka'ahi substation. We were able to get access into that substation with HECO and continue work there. There's a 138 kV pole foundation that needs to be installed there. There's actually a temporary pole that needs to be put in so that the switchover can be done. So that work is progressing there within Ka'ahi substation for CCR 4. CCR 3, the work along downtown area, a lot of the work that the contractor is working on is the traffic signals at Nimitz and Bethel, other intersections along Nimitz. If you recall, previously there was some unforeseen issues that we encountered, some archaeological finds that when the contractor was digging for these traffic signals, they found an old wall that was buried in the ground that needed SHPD to weigh in on, so we had to stop work. SHPD did their investigation. We provided information, photographs, documentation to SHPD. SHPD did make their final recommendation, and we are able to move forward with that work.
What's
State Historic Preservation Department, or SHPO. So they made their determination. We were able to move on, so the contractor is moving forward with that work. The contractor is also working on potholing along Halakawila. So if you take a look at Halakawila, the contractor started near the GSA or the federal building, doing some potholing for the column locations, investigative work there. They'll continue to do that. There's a number of column locations that the contractor will pothole at, roughly 22 locations for investigative work there. Airport Guideway and Stations, the civil contractor continues to work on punch list items. The major item that they're working on currently is a stair issue. There was an NCR issued for some stairs that don't meet code requirements. The contractor tried a multiple possible fixes for that that didn't work out. They finally settled on what will be the final fix. Similar to what's done at the LCC station, there's a nosing and cover that will go over the stairs to meet the requirements for code. That material is on order. The last that we've heard from the supplier, the material will arrive in October timeframe. They're looking at ways to expedite that material to get it here sooner. We're waiting for confirmation whether or not that can be done. Air freight over, get it here as soon as possible. So that affects all stations, all 4 stations they need to do that at. They'll work from Airport Station to Pearl Harbor Station, and then the last 2 once they finish the first 2. So, we're looking at end of the year timeframe for those stair issues to be resolved, hoping to bring that back up sooner, depending on whether or not we can get the material on island earlier. And again, they continue to work on all other punch list items within the stations, touching up paint here and there, fixing minor things. Nothing that's impacting the core systems contractor and that's scheduled to complete everything by the end of 2025. The core systems contractor, as I think we mentioned last time, they were preparing, or they were doing the clearance test up on segment 2, where they pulled the train at slow speed with a template around the train to represent the dynamic envelope of the train to, when the train's moving side to side, if it has what I call a flat tire, or if the suspension's leaning one way or the other, to make sure all the devices that was installed there doesn't conflict with the train. We don't want a train to hit any of that devices. So that was done and completed. There was no issues up on the guideway. They continued on with clearance test with the contact rail and the collector shoe to make sure that interface works properly and there's no conflict there. And then they continued on with platform clearance test as well, where they pull the train to the platform, measure the distance, make sure we meet all the ADA requirements, contract requirements, from the platform screen gate door to the train door. There's requirements for entrapment there so that we don't have any issues with passengers getting trapped between the 2 doors. So they continued that. They continue to run trains on segment 2, so at any given time you can be out there and see trains moving along. They're running at 5 to 10 miles per hour, very slow speed test, the preliminary test to get us up to speed. And they'll continue to progress that, increasing speed as they move along. And hopefully by the end of the year, early next year, we're running, close to what operational speed will be. There's a lot of testing that needs to occur at that point in time, and potentially, give you a preview of what that's going to look like in terms of migrating, segment 1 and segment 2 together, and how that interface will work and how that testing will work. Getting to that very quickly so we can provide some details in that. Making really good progress in terms of schedule, and continue to work with the core systems contractor. A lot of the comms, all the other subsystems like comms, SCADA, FDAS, core systems contractor is progressing and testing, getting that completed, and integrating those step by step. Very similar to what we did on segment 1. A lot of the tests within the station subsystem runs the same path. The only difference here is we'll have what's called a cutover between segment 1 and segment 2, which is very different from what we did in segment 1. Challenging nonetheless, but confident in the team that we can get to a technical solution to get that interface working and running properly. And then at the end running trial operations, system demo, and then getting it ready and turned over to DTS end of 2025. And that's all I have. And take any questions.
Members, questions? Michelle?
Yeah, page 5. Can you talk about the HECO access for CCUR to the property still in process of TPAR? That came up at the board meeting a couple weeks ago, and I thought maybe you could share some insight into
And this
schedule.
This is just general HECO access to any properties along the alignment.
The ones that are still under TPAR that we that the briefing that we got at the board meeting when we were talking about, should we wait because this person didn't have a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember that discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, that particular property, I was wondering if because it's been a couple of weeks, right? You guys were going to kind of go back and do some research. What did the research come up with in terms of what date it needs access to stay off the critical path, basically?
Yes. I don't have that information at this time. but we can get
Did
back.
you guys do the analysis and you just don't remember?
We did the analysis. I just didn't have the information
Okay.
provided to me.
Can you take an action to send it to us?
Yep.
Okay. The second thing is, can you talk about what day the transfer of the guideway to Hitachi is supposed to take place? Because I know it probably is, it's not on the critical path, but I'm kind of curious because you guys are in the process of doing all these tests. When do you turn that over to Hitachi? What's the projected date?
So right now we're working towards providing Hitachi all the documentation and information. We have the package together for the asset. So we're actually only handing over the track. They're only responsible for operation and maintenance of the track itself. Right now it's in, I believe, Hitachi's ball in court to review the documentation. They actually performed an inspection of the track that they provided a report to us that we're reviewing. We need to address some of their comments and get back to them, looking to resolve that here shortly. I think in the next month or so, we should be able to transfer that asset over to Hitachi.
Okay, so when they when they walk the track, they basically have comments and you guys are tracking some kind of discrepancy report list, right?
Yeah.
So the DR list, what level concern is the highest level concern that they have on that discrepancy list? I mean, like, it could be like all little Manini things, or it could be like, oh my God, we're gonna have to do some rework or something, right? Where is it?
Yeah, so there's one particular area that they've pointed out where there isn't sufficient clips to the rail. And we need to go in and put those clips in. In some areas they were installed, some areas they weren't. That's one area where they have concern, where they are imposing a speed restriction in that area, and it's through the crossover, so it isn't in the tangent or straight through directions.
Are you saying that's the place where like we turn into the airport, like that speed restriction curve?
No, it's actually in the double crossovers.
Oh,
in
okay.
those,
So
DXO.
there's some rework that needs to get done, I mean, okay,
Yeah.
that's not, thank you. Is there anything else?
Yeah, and the other minor stuff that
Okay.
they pointed out that doesn't impact any operations or anything.
Okay, page 13. There's a bunch of these target dates, some of them that have passed. Where are we with these 2024 things? I mean, yeah, they need to get done, but is somebody actually working on them and what's the status?
Yes, and majority of these fall within TPAR. In terms of the target dates, and again, they're just target dates that the team is working towards, not necessarily impacting schedule if we don't meet those target dates.
Right.
I think looking at Kalihi Kai was the only one in July, and I can't recall if we resolved that one yet. We do have access to perform construction and work within that property.
Right. I mean, like I look at the July one and it says, oh, it's over on their side. So we're kind of waiting for them to come back, right? So you're like, well, it's late, but like we're waiting on you, right? So it's more do you have somebody actually working on them and, like keeping track of these? It looks like it, but, if you need to change the target date, then that's something that needs to get looked at as well, right? I mean,
As far as tracking this, she has agents working on all of these, but majority of these are in the state ball and court. So we
Right,
have
right.
no.
yeah, it's sort of like,
But
you know,
she
if-
has somebody absolutely tracking every one of these. So she updates these monthly. And if you look at historical reports, yes, the date has changed, but every month we push it out, but we don't have control over the state process. But yes, to answer your question, there is an agent assigned to each one of these.
okay. Page 25. So this is what I call a miracle occurs and then we like go way up, but it really is a scope change that we've been waiting on at ECP for like 3 months to kind of come. Can you give the status of that?
Yeah, so we did receive the contractor's price proposal. We are negotiating with the contractors, so I don't want to talk too much on what that price is.
Right.
And we're going through that process. Once we agree to that price, then we will execute the change order.
So does that cause a problem because you're actually a little bit late in doing that in what your actual plan originally was, or is that not a big deal?
It's not a major issue at this point in time. If we look at what we're projecting for the change order and where the contract will end, we will be above the line. And one thing to note, I failed to mention earlier in the update, CCR3's schedule, we did see a slip in the schedule. They did push out from September to November. A lot of that had to do with the traffic signal issues that I mentioned earlier. No major issues to the critical path or the overall project schedule.
And that's not a cost impact, it's just a schedule impact,
Yes.
right? So I can be a little bit less worried about, oh my God, we're gonna somehow do all this work in 2 months because they pushed it. And you're gonna complete negotiations and they'll actually start working to the new plans next month, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's just, from the time you told us to the time, it's just, I'm just kind of trying to keep track of what's going on and understand what's going on with that. So,
Yeah, I agreed. It bothers me too that this line continues to be under, and we're trying to get this change order, presented and executed as soon as possible. Coluccio did have some staffing changes, so that negotiation, I don't want to say it had to restart, but we had to bring staff up to speed as to where we were in those negotiations.
do you know why that was an impact? Was that an impact because they're doing other work on the island and they're bringing in new people into our, you know what I'm saying? They're
Yeah.
taking experienced people and putting them over here, not on our stuff, and then they're filling in with like brand new people. Is that what they're
No,
doing?
The staff member didn't move to another Coluccio project. He actually moved to a different contractor.
So they left.
Yeah.
So they had to refill. Okay. Okay. I'll reserve the rest of my questions after everybody else gets a turn.
Yeah, Chair, couple questions. Hey, Vance. Hey, Corey. So this is kind of in the presentation every month, and, for some reason, I just noticed this. So we go back to page 4. Where it says, the 2022 recovery plan, then current forecast, and incurred to date. Why is it there's zeros on unallocated contingency and allocated contingency? Because I'm pretty sure we use allocated contingency, right? So is this just for presentation, or is there like a method to this madness that we're not recognizing the use of allocated contingency?
Yeah. So essentially, we don't incur costs against our contingency line item. That budget is moved to a base cost first with your approval if it's over $1 million, and then we spend the money on that line item. So you'll never see it incurred on contingency. You'll see it, the drawdown on contingency, moving to whatever line item.
Oh, no, I understand, but is that how it's supposed to be presented? Because when someone just look at the incurred, whoever the reader is would get the impression that, we have never used any allocated contingency, nor have we drawn down on the unallocated contingency.
No, the drawdown curves that we show at the end of the report shows you the drawdown of actual contingency. You'll just never see an expenditure. Our contractors or nobody can have, there's not a line item in their contract to spend contingency. It moves to a scope item that we've allocated, and then we spend it on that item. So if there's a question on drawdown, then that's on a different chart.
Okay. Okay, I'll buy your explanation. I don't know I agree with it, but anyway, but
I would think that as you draw it out of allocated contingency and move it to whatever project, that would be an incur.
It's
Why
not
isn't
an,
that an incur?
it's not an incurred cost, so that's what we spent. So that means we paid money against that line item. There's not a line item for a contractor to bill for incurred.
How much of the allocated contingency has been spent so far?
Go to the drawdown curve on the end. Let me see what page it is.
Find the number.
Yeah, you could go to the each of the project.
Yeah, I know you can go to each
and
of the
see it.
projects, but like, you're like,
yeah.
oh, I put $500 million into allocated contingency. How much do we have left? Because, you know, I think my challenge is,
36.
when's the time, because you're allocating contingency to different projects, when is the time to take it back, for example? When's the time for Lori to come in and say, give me 10% back because I gave you allocated contingency and you as a project manager didn't need to use all of it, so I'm gonna tell you to give me 10% back, right? So there's this management function that occurs because you're looking at how you're using contingency,
Sure.
right? How do we get insight into that?
So the contingency drawdown curve, sorry, I'm referencing is page 36. I guess to your question on when is a good time to take contingency back. So every project has its own individual risk profile. And so kind of depending on the significant milestones within that project, there's a corresponding contingency level the project should have left. So normally you wouldn't even think about taking any contingency until you're at least, 3/4 of the way down the project where
We've gone
all
through
your
2
risk.
years- We've gone through 2 years and the drawdown curve hasn't moved. So you're kind of like, well, why isn't some coming back to unallocated contingency? For 2 years, we haven't used any of it.
So so CCR3 is an example where there would be some money coming back. AGS was one that went the other way. We end up using contingency. So there's nets, into that
And
number.
I don't know if I would agree with you that you wait until 3/4 of the work done. You have a risk table that has risk for each project. If you incur, if it turns into a problem, not a risk anymore, then you have to use contingency.
Sure.
If you manage through it, then POW, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
So-
and we update our risk, on a monthly basis to
Right.
account for that. And a lot of the risk, fortunately, is at the tail end.
Yeah, and I'm not saying nickel and dime all the project managers. What I'm saying is, in a big scale, it's been 2 years and our contingency drawdown hasn't moved, right? And so it's a little bit, it doesn't explain itself well.
Okay.
Kika, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just one last question on page 21, which has to do with the on-call contract. And I think I asked this before, I just kind of forgot the answer. So anyway, the original task order amount is 48.8 million. But the total change order is $52 million. Now, how does that work to get to that point? 46 million compared to the total project may not be a whole lot, but now is becoming real money when we have that much change order, and and I'm not sure any of us are aware of it. I'm just reading exactly what you wrote here.
So this on-call encompasses 3 line items of on-call. On-call 1, actually 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
This is 4 only.
Yes.
I'm just reading the page. On-call construction 4.
Yes. So the total contract for that is $97 million, as I said as it says on the bottom.
Yes.
I think we've given them change orders, which it's a task order contract, so it's a little differently than the other ones. So those changes come in as a form of like amendments, is in this example. I guess I'm not clear on your question, but the total contract value is $97 million. We've reflected 51 million of that, or 52 million of as a change order, and those have been executed.
Actually, the total contract award was 46 million. We had 52 million of change order to bring the contract value to 97 million or whatever, right? I'm just questioning, how did we get to the point where we issue 52 million in change order. And, you know, and I don't recall, I've only been on the board for 2 years, but I don't really recall that ever being brought up, right?
So there, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, we did come to the board for a change order, and I can't recall what the dollar amount was to, let's say, re-up that contract. It was a fairly large, I want to say it was 30 million, but I could be wrong there. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, and it was in that 2-year time frame, I believe. This contract is about to expire in January 25. So we're not expecting any other change orders for this contract.
I can give you a
I'm
detail.
not sure. I'm just reading this. The unawarded portion of the contract is $20 million. So, okay, the original award is 46 million, right? We had change orders of 52 million to add up to 97 million. Then why would we still reflect 20 million as unawarded portion of the contract? I'm guessing when you do a change order, it is already part of the contract, right?
This is a task order, so that would be the task that we'd still have to issue to award that portion of the contract. So we could give them a value up to a certain point, but we still have to issue task orders against that.
So how, okay, maybe it's just semantics here. So when you say total change order amount added to the contract is 52 million, what you're telling me just now is we did not add 52 million in, excuse me, into the contract? There's
Yes.
20 million that still should be added to the contract? Is that?
The 52 million is added to the contract, but it isn't spent until a task order is issued to the contractor. So let's say, you know, on-call needs to go fix a pothole. We issue a task order for $1,000. And then that 20 million will decrease by $1,000
No,
because the task order is issued.
understand. Okay, maybe I'm just a little confused about why there's a change order without any work attached to it,
So is that when
which is $20 million. So we did a 52 million change order, but 20.2 million has not been identified as work, right? I'm just curious,
Yeah.
you know, then, and you know, how do you pick $52 million if you don't even know how much work is out there?
So based on the change order we've provided in ICE, that we identify potential scope of work that we have. You know, on the west side, we had a whole bunch of punch lists that need to be done, maintenance of the landscaping for HDOT and things like that. And we had an estimate based on that. So we do have an estimate of what we are expecting for that change order. And things, as I mentioned, landscaping, all the miscellaneous items that are, you know, whether out of scope from the civil contractor or, you know, because of the delay from segment 1 to get that operational, the landscaping still had to be maintained until it was actually turned over. Pre-operations maintenance, things like that.
Okay, so this contract ends January 2025. Are we in the process of rebidding
Yes.
this work out? Okay. Okay, well, just keep a better eye on it. So the 20.2 million unawarded portion of the contract, I'm just assuming we're probably not gonna use that entire amount, right? Because there's only now it's August, there's only 5 months left.
So there is a lag in billing. I don't want to say we're not going to use all of it.
No, I'm
yeah.
not talking about, okay, so billing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't wanna get into it. So
Yeah.
billing is a different thing, right?
So we do
than
have
this
some,
right here.
yeah, we do have some task orders teed up that still need to be issued to the contractor. We are right now deciding whether we're going to issue it in this CCR 4 or if we're going to issue it in CCR 5. So we may or may not expend all of that 20 million. I would expect not to expend all of it, but don't want to say we're not going to spend any of it.
So of the 52 million that you all issue as a change order, none of that reached the limit where you had to come to the board to get approval?
Correct.
Of the 52 million,
Yeah.
I think what we'll do, I'll go back and look at all the change orders for that contract. I'll provide that to you. We'd have to go back to you, obviously, if it was something of that large. And then we'll understand what was the scope of that change order. And I think what you're seeing, that 20 million, is just we haven't issued tasks against the whole thing yet, but there's still outstanding tasks to be issued to this contractor.
Well, I know you all have a lot of things to do. I'm not sure you should put that as a priority because it's already done. It's already done for, right? So,
Yeah.
if you have time.
Yeah, no, it should be a quick.
It would be nice to find out whether any of that amount that you came to the board to get approval.
Sure. Yes. I'll get that to you, and also if there's where we think we're going to end up that contract.
Okay. Well, I think to get a board approval, the change order has to be $1 million or more, right? Yeah. So I just don't want to see a whole bunch of change orders for $990,000. Okay, thanks.
We don't want to process a bunch of change.
Yeah.
You done? Eric?
Yes.
Good. Anthony, you got?
Thanks, Chair. Couple of quick questions. On the airport guideway segment, STG were incurring liquidated damages. I think, am I right in thinking we've actually awarded substantial completion? Are they still incurring LDs?
So we've only issued substantial completion for the Guideway and Pearl Harbor Station. The other 3 stations are still outstanding. Yes, we do have rights to liquidated damages for those stations.
But those conversations haven't started yet because they haven't closed out.
We've had discussions with STG in terms of that. And as I mentioned, it's never black and white. So it will be difficult to argue. They do understand that we do have the right for liquidated damages. They are doing the best they can to get out of here. They want to get out of here as quickly as possible.
Right. On CCUR 3, that's one of the success projects because it's coming in under budget, but SHPD held us up now for 2 months. Does that mean that the money that's coming back is going to be a little bit less than we anticipated? Or does the 2 months delay not really affect that?
I'm going to say potentially.
Potentially,
Yes.
which?
It could affect what the savings is.
Okay.
Don't
In
wanna
a substantial way, or, I mean?
I don't think it's substantial.
Okay. I thought I had another, but I've forgotten it, but that's it for the moment, Chair.
Okay. Chair, you have any questions?
Yes. Thank you. On page 10, we have design services for 138 kV utility relocation of Kamehameha Highway. The notice to proceed was September 2018, and the HECO electrical design, assuming that they, I guess, cooperate, and it's August 2024. And this is for the design only. So I'm assuming, and we're supposed to be October 2025, but there's still the undergrounding, I assume, of the 138 kVs on Kamehameha Highway, right? So where in our budget is this? Is there a CPP number?
If I remember correctly, and Corey can correct me, there's no specific CPP. This is built
we
into the
recently-
util.
I didn't find one, so I was
Yeah.
wondering, because I mean, when you have a notice to proceed of September 2018, and this has been a discussion all the way along, matter of fact, I thought the original design of Kamehameha was not going to require the undergrounding of 138 kVs. So when we're talking about the undergrounding of 138 kVs, is it for the whole run, or is it portions of the run? What are we looking at?
This was I believe maybe a couple of months ago, we presented what that would look like. And it's not the entire Kamehameha Highway. There's sections that will be underground. There's sections that will be reframed on the existing poles. Yeah, that's for this entire 130 kV work.
I don't recall the total amount that you expected that to be, because the amount here is for design. So do you remember what the amount was going to be?
We're projecting about 40 million
Yeah.
for construction.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Chair, the delay on this actually is, we're having a difficult time with HECO on this one. In particular, that I'm personally involved is the Firestone building out there. It just does not seem right to cut off the front 3 feet of that building that Kamehameha Schools may demolish in a few years. So I'm trying to get between Kamehameha Schools and HECO to agree. We shouldn't have to do that. And so we've hired consultants from the mainland to show HECO that what you're asking is not industry standard. So it's actually not the consultant that's delaying this. They're like you can see they're at 90+%. It's me trying to facilitate between Kamehameha Schools and HECO. Honestly, we don't think we need to do a lot of this work. They've already forgiven about 90% of that scope because of those specialized trucks. I'm trying to minimize that last 10%. Like, do we really need to do this $40 million project?
Because I remember way back when we authorized those trucks, it was to avoid having to underground the 138 kVs. And the representation from HECO was if Hart bought those trucks, which Hart did, then they could safely, because that's what this is all about, safely service those 138 kVs. So when I saw this, I said, wait a minute, what are we doing? What do you mean we're still waiting for HECO's approval? But I'm sure, Lori, it hasn't been from September 2018 to August 2024 for what you're doing. There is clearly an issue. Okay, I just wanted to follow up on that. The other one is on page 24. This is the AGS issue. And it says we're about 99%, I think, complete on AGS, with the exception of the various substations. The guideways power, right?
Correct.
And then physical complete is, and we're 6 months behind, according to this. And anyway, so the funding on page 24 has the FFGA at 874, which is the original FFGA, I assume. Or is that the amended FFGA, the 874 million?
That should be the base contract.
That's the base contract, right? And so then we have change orders of 115. So the total amount of 990, because are we still, the representation in AGS was that we're going to be under $1 billion. So we're still under the billion,
Yes.
right? And we're still working on that settlement that was negotiated prior.
That's complete. That settlement's complete, and that's what's baked in there. The understanding and the agreement is, no more change orders. We're finishing out the work with the current understanding of the cost.
Except liquidated damage.
Except for
So then we have this non-contractual expenses of 3 million. That's quite a bit of what is non-contractual expenses?
I guess.
Yeah, so that's an issue that, and actually, this was to do with a radio antenna that we dealt with years ago. It was work that somehow got put in this CPP, but it wasn't done by this contractor. So it's non-contractual because it's not an STG contractual expense. It is a contractual expense that was associated with the airport guideway. So we've put it here. Not clear if this is the best place to represent it. So yeah, we're looking at where this should be, but that's what the 3 million was. It dealt with this antenna several years ago.
I remember that.
Yeah,
So that's where it ended up.
that's where it ended up.
Okay, so it's not really.
It's not an
SDG.
STG expense.
Okay. Now, are we just, on CCUR 3, which is on page 25, the representation is we're 2 months behind. Are we still scheduled for completion ending of 24?
Yes. So with that 2-month delay, we're looking at November of this year.
Because September is originally when it was intended. And this is the one that potentially, the 87 million change order in favor of Hart. Is that because we're taking out some of the electrical work? What represents that? You know, potential changes on page 26 is $87 million.
Yeah.
And that had to do with the optimizations that we were looking at along Halakawila, and this is what our estimate is.
So it's optimizations on Halakwila and on Nimitz. And then there was also a fair share of like allowances in the contract that we didn't end up tapping into. Some of that as
The
well.
bottom line for Calucho will be about $152 million, the contract value.
That's the projection right now,
Yeah.
yes.
And when they finish in November of 2024, correct? Okay. That's all for me, Chair.
Members, any other questions? Michelle?
Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
couple more. Can we go back? Oh wait, I'm gonna do them in order. Page 36, the contingency drawdown. What I was thinking was, you know, that recovery plan EAC, I mean, it had a basis, but it looks like pretty linear drawdown, right? And that's not really how projects go. So it kind of looks like, oh man, we really managed it really good, or we've been really, really lucky, or a combination of that, or a combination of maybe that plan wasn't as realistic to what our project needs really were in terms of time, or we're hoarding $200 million in allocated contingency and we can just take it out because somehow we can execute the program to the recovery plan and I could take out $200 million right now, which I don't think you're saying, right? But it looks like that, right? It looks like that. So I'm wondering, after we get CCGS contract laid in, maybe a line that would be useful would be an actual plan, not in addition to the recovery plan, right? To show like where you think the timeline of, put in the times of when you think you're going to need it, because it's not linear. It's not linear when you really think you're going to be using it, right? And it looks like there's $200 million just sitting there, right? That's what it looks like for lots of reasons. Maybe good luck, good management, you know, all kinds of other things. That's what it looks like. So I'm just making a suggestion, but you know, after a couple of years, you know, it's kind of like, wow, we've been really lucky and we've been managing it really, really well. Maybe we could take some of it out. That's what it looks like. Not all of it, but maybe there's some there, you know. That's just a comment. Page 43. We talked about changing these colors. Can we change these colors next month, please? So that we don't have two yellows and two greens, because the positive stuff and the negative stuff are the same color, yellow and green. And I don't really care what color you use, but you could use purple and orange if you want. I don't know, whatever. But not yellow and green, because the other ones are yellow and green. Remember? Okay.
The risk ones.
Yeah. Can you remind me, this is kind of not on a page, but when was the last PMOC report that we got? What date, what month was it? What month PMOC
I want to say
report was
May.
May.
Yeah, I think it was
And
May.
their June one's not out yet.
I think we just got it.
You just got it.
Yeah, we just
It
got
seems
it.
like we're like somehow just missing the cutoff date for putting it in here, so we don't get to see it, and it kind of sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried. Again, out of our control, FTA
No,
reviews
no,
the
no, no,
PMC.
I understand.
Yeah,
It's just that, like, now you gotta wait like a whole nother month because it came in like, today, you know, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Do we have any way to deal with that? Like, maybe they could put in last month's and then give an update one at the last minute or not?
Maybe they could just look at our calendar of meetings and think we've got to meet that deadline.
Yeah, but they're not gonna meet our deadline. That's FTA. They're gonna just do their thing. It's more if it comes in just in time, can we put it in just in time? Do we have any update one can we put an update to a briefing?
Consistently, when has it come in? Has it come in on a certain day
It used to
consistently?
be working and
No.
now it's not.
PMLC submits it to FTA and then FTA reviews. So
Yeah.
PMLC is pretty consistent on when they submit because they send it to us to, if there's any inaccuracies, we have the opportunity to send it to them but it's FTAs that's not consistent.
The question is this, if our committee meetings were moved further down, what are our probabilities of success? Because we're the first meeting. So if our committee meetings change, would we have a better probability of success of getting the PMOC?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then what's the estimate as to when our committee meetings, it would
have
more
to
than
be.
likely would be?
Yeah.
Because it seems that that's the easier solution than.
Yeah,
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I mean, we can't make them do it, but we can jiggle, because I think before, there's been a time where we got them in the,
I think that was when the committees met prior to the board. That's my recollection. If you go back in time, remember there was a whole period of time where committee meetings were right before the board meeting.
Yeah, so
I
it was
think
later in the
that-
month.
Sure,
Yeah.
actually, we had discussions with Robert and Kika. We're having a hard time with the first Friday of the month. This month was really bad. When that end of the month happens, the closeout of those financing and to try to get that cash flow posted 2 days later, it's really difficult for us and give us time to check for accuracy. So both chairs are open to pushing it back. And ideally, it would be the same day as the board meetings. So
Remember, that's what the way it used to be, but we didn't want to have it because we would be the whole day. And actually, one of the discussions Kika and I had was that maybe if that was the case, we just have one, like the old days, we used to have one, Corey remembers this, we would have one meeting, it would be the board meeting, and everything would be there.
Right.
And the only issue then would be, for example, change orders of less than $5 million. Because over 5, it comes to the board, 1 to 5, it goes to POC committee. So I think those were the issues, but if I recall correctly, we were better off when we did we got the reports when we were doing it all at one time. And the question becomes, should we just then have one long board meeting? Because, right now we're the last phase anyway, or almost the last phase
Or we
anyway.
can move the committee meetings 1 week forward, right?
With those meetings as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask, how long is the FTA typically sitting on the PMOC report before it gets to us?
a few months ago, we got 3 at one time. That's not typical. And usually what's happening is I'm having to ping the administrator, where's your reports?
That's not right. FTA, if you're watching, could you pick up the pace of it,
Typical,
please?
like I said, not typical, but, yeah. I think if we do push it back at least 1 week, we'll have a better chance. And that'll actually help us on the cash flows too.
What do you think about? I just was, okay, page 47. So, I think this is really good news, and I think I kind of wanted to call attention to it because we do tens of thousands of hours of work on dangerous things that are like above the ground with like very high voltages sometimes, and trains moving back and forth, and like lots of different contractors coming in and doing work and coordinating things with each other. And I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about it because I think this is good news, and maybe you could talk about the process you use to coordinate the different contractors coming in and how you do the safety coordination. I think it's a good story.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the safety department, they do an excellent job of going out on field, meeting with contractors, making sure, the contractor is working safely. Before any big activity or change in activity, new work that's going to occur that hasn't, that type of work hasn't occurred yet, they require a pre-activity meeting where, the contractor lays out, this is the work that's going to occur. Here's my activity hazard analysis. Here's all the potential risks. How are we mitigating those risks? What the process is for incidents that does occur. How is that handled? We do weekly walks with the contractor to take a look at the site. For example, Dillingham, all the loose gravel and things like that. We look at cones and making sure that the cones are up to date and they're not all dirty and all the reflective tape is properly installed. We look at trenches and making sure that any open hole in the ground has barricade and whatnot and meets all the safety requirements. So the safety team, they do a great job as to meeting with the contractors, and they have a really good relationship with the safety representatives from the contractors. Require, you know, full-time on-site safety representative that's here making sure that, you know, their work is being done safely. So huge props and credits to the safety team for managing that and working with the contractors.
I would give props to them too. You know, the thing that I was thinking has always been, it's important to have a city government lead for areas that report directly to the executive management team. And it would be nice, even if you hire a junior person as the lead for that, that they could learn a lot. And it's not like we couldn't use that in all the construction that we do anywhere on the island. So it's just a thought for Lori, because it's not really under you, Vance, but you know, it is always more advantageous to start training, you know, government people and to have a government person, because it's difficult for a contractor to be accountable except for what's in their contract. The government people all have really, really important roles of oversight, fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer, those kinds of things. And in a lot of areas, we don't have somebody that's a city employee that does that, right? And I think that's important. So anyway, my comment of, you got a whole box, they're doing great, but it's all contractors, and we don't even have somebody just kind of watching and learning. And that's something where I think that it's working so well that you could really like learn a lot. Somebody could learn a lot from that team. Anyway, thank you.
Paul?
Paul.
I want to note the presence of board member Roger Morton as well. Anybody else? Yes.
Quick one.
Anthony?
Critical path, which I think is CCUR4 basically, right? A month ago, we were, I think, 2 days ahead of critical path. Where are we at the moment?
So right now, same critical path, same about a week or so, difference in float. The award of the CCGS contract obviously would be influential on that. So as long as we keep that on track, that should continue to be the path.
The message to the public at large is, at the moment, at least, we're still on schedule, which is great news.
Correct.
Anybody else?
One last question for
Robert.
me. Vance, Corey, could you just go over the definition a little bit on what's a reportable incident and what's a non-reportable incident, and also whether there's any dollar value attached to the incidents that are reportable and non-reportable? If it's in the report, I could read it. I just didn't know.
Let me give my best definition of that. So reportable incident is if there's loss of time. So, you know, if the staff, the person that's involved has to go to the hospital or spends time, you know, in the hospital, that would be a reportable incident. If you recall, the concrete truck that tipped over along Dillingham that we had, I would say, earlier this year, I believe that was a reportable incident that the driver of the concrete truck did have to leave the job site and get looked at. And so that would be one reportable incident. Can get you a better definition of that from our safety team.
Okay, so in essence, it just really whether someone whether there's lost time involved, right? Then it's reportable. If there's no lost time involved, then it's non-reportable. And has that definition, and there's no dollar value attached to it, right?
No.
On any of the incident. No. You know, something that costs $1 would be the same as something that costs $100,000, right? Yeah. Okay. And that definition hasn't changed over time, or do we change the definition over time?
Don't believe that's changed.
That's an FTA definition, right? Because
Not FDA.
It's an OSHA.
It's an OSHA.
I think it's OSHA.
TPIR is a standard, so aren't you following the standards for reporting?
Yes.
So it's got to be if you're following the reporting standards, then we've got to be using the same reasons.
It's a good comment. Maybe we'll add
It
that
depends on the
definition.
dollar threshold. Like
It
for
might be,
us,
it might
our
be.
threshold is
Yeah.
a little bit lower than what the NTD requires, right? So that's what I'm
Oh, I
asking,
see.
whether
Whether
it
ours
just-
is more stringent than the standard.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's both a measure of the incident and value, or it's just the incident itself.
Yeah, whether there's lost time. Like if you, if I walk around here, stub my toe and, I get it looked at and I'm fine and I'm back to work, within minutes, then it's not a reportable incident. But if I, hurt myself and I'm out of work for 5 days, I believe that's a reportable incident.
Right. Whether it's 5 days,
Yeah, it doesn't matter if
when
it's
you miss
1 day.
work for 5 days, there's a dollar value, right? So I guess what we're saying is, whether you miss work for 5 days or 50 days, it's still one
counts as
incident.
one.
A
Yeah, there's
reportable-
no
yeah,
severity
exactly.
involved in it. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Aaron's gonna be coming down.
Our director
Oh,
of
no,
safety. He's
Perfect.
coming down.
I really don't want to drag this on. I just want to know what the
I would like
definition
for him to
is.
hear what you folks have to say about complimenting him. He's doing great. He's doing a great job, and he'll be here. He's coming down right now. But in the meantime, are there other questions?
It's kind of like quality and safety don't get like, a lot of kudos, but because they got hard jobs. But, I do think that they've been doing a good job.
Yeah, and they do a lot of work behind the scenes, and you're right, we don't mention them enough in this report, but we can definitely provide any further information. Quality does a great job. They've, go through all the audits with the contractors and continue to oversee a lot of the work, track all the NCRs that are outstanding, pushing the contractors, almost on a weekly basis of, you had this NCR open for 5 days. What is your plan? When are you going to remediate? And we need to get this completed as soon as possible. And they continue to do a good job.
So since we're waiting for the safety director, so I'm not sure who takes care of OSIP at Hart now. Is it?
So our claims department has gotten involved with OSIP, and they're, going through the ins and outs of the OSIP program.
Okay, so, what would be better news is maybe in one of the meetings, you could give a trend line of the lost time claims and the value of those lost time claims, and hopefully if they're consistent with your chart, then not only are we lowering the incidence, but we're also reducing the value of those claims as well. Because I know Hart has like a reserve under our OSIP program, which we pay out, claims, workers' comp, liability or whatnot, right? And I'm not sure what that balance is. And whatever that balance is, at the end of the OSIP program, it returns to Hart after a certain runoff of claims.
Going forward, workers' comp is not included in our OSIP. That's where we're finding a lot of the claims were coming in. So like CCGS, I don't believe is going to be covered with,
Yeah, but the OSIP was in the AGS and all the others, right? And sometimes it takes time to resolve the claims. Someone could have a workers' comp and they could be out for 5 years, right? Yeah. So, when you have time or the safety person have time, if we could, kind of do a trend to see what the claim costs are, for maybe the same time period.
Contractors now covering their own workers' comp,
Yes.
because OSIF was there to accommodate, basically help them. So now they each have to do their own, all the contract. Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
I'm just curious, because the Kamehameha Highway, basically the guideway, the Kamehameha guideway system, and the idea, as I was pointing out on the whole issue of the, on page 10, on the, basically the design of the 138 kV lines, and we did, I remember the, going through the change order. Technically, that segment is closed out, right? The Kamehameha segment is closed out.
Yes,
operation.
Like the Kiewit, basically the
Yep.
two Kiewit segments are closed out. So when we have something like this, that we have to now pay for, whatever it may be, because we don't know what HECO's going to say as to what they're going to agree to in terms of the design. Where does that go? So you've closed out the Kiewit portions, which Kamehameha is. So where does that change order, because there's no CPP on it, so where does that money go?
Yep, that we'll create a CPP for that once we have a contractor. We're gonna have to go out for bid on the construction work.
So, and then what then procedurally happens? Because technically, we've closed it all out, so we have to refund you, basically. We have to approve that
Yeah.
CPP, right?
So right now that work is in the util CPP. So we're gonna pull that out of the util CPP and put it into a 138 construction CPP specifically. And we'll discuss with the board once we get to that point on how this plays out.
So very quickly, the second thing is that, you know, on the on-call contractor, I mean, that's done to basically accommodate primarily the public. So we get potholes, whatever else. However, is there an analysis done as to whether that should be assessed against the contractor? In other words, whatever it is. So how does that then work? Because we're paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Immediate remedy is on, but do we get any of that paid back to us? Do we claim it, first of
Yeah.
all? And what's the process and what's been our success rate?
Yeah, so what we do, and I'll give you a real life example. So for example, the west side, the stations at the platform end gates, there was a push bar on the track side of the gate where someone from the track could push the bar and come onto the platform, maintenance worker, emergency, whatever it may be. And the public could reach over and push that push bar, which would cause interruptions to service and everything else on the DTS end. And unfortunately, it was a scope gap between the guideway, the station contractor and the design. We did take a look at it. We evaluated, yes, there was no requirement for that, but it is a safety and operations issue. We do the background research to make sure that it wasn't missed by anyone or any contractor, that they just didn't install it, or they were directed to, or just didn't put it in the design. So we do that evaluation, and then we have the on-call contractor. If there are errors in omission, we do note that. We keep a list of all the errors and omissions that we have. For example, core systems contractor, we've got a list of things that we see as should be on them, that we are owed credit to, and then at some point in time we will assess whether that's credit back to us, how we would get that, whether it's built into a claim.
I just want to be sure that we don't blow any statutes, so that you make your claim when we can claim, and it isn't where, how many years down the road, like Kiewit contract, and we're saying, okay, by the way, you owe us for this, and it's like, wait a minute, this contract is POW, you didn't raise it properly in time, and we're out. And I'd like to think that a lot of the on-call amounts that we've been paying out, we should be refunded due to the nature of them. But, it could be that we're not. But even potholes or iron, those metal steel plates, if they hurt somebody and they put it down, that should be something that should be claimed against the contractor.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so maybe you can do not now, but when things settle down, you can give us an analysis of exactly how much of that on the on-call contract, which is 90-something million now. And I understand we haven't called on all of it, but we called on a substantial amount of it. How much of that are we getting potentially refunded for versus we have to eat it? Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Michelle, did you want to share what?
Yeah, I wanted to say that,
You're-
when we,
Sorry.
thank you. When we went through the monthly report, it's been quite some time that we talked about safety, and we don't talk about it a lot, probably because you're doing a good job, right? And you're one of the areas where if you do a good job, everybody's just like, oh, okay, cool, right? There's not a lot of emphasis on it. And so I wanted to kind of bring attention to it during this POC meeting because, you guys have been working really hard. There's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of work that's dangerous work, that has traffic, that has high voltage, that has high heights. There's a plethora of different contractors to coordinate with. And I think that your team and you have been doing an excellent job. And I just wanted to thank you for your work.
Thank you. I'm very gracious. So, good morning, everyone. Aaron Myers, Director of Safety and Security, new director since March of this year. So, the old director, Dave Garris, he is now my deputy. So, we kind of did a transition where I stepped up. He's transitioning off the project probably towards the end of the year, and I'll be completely taken over by then. But right now, I still have him to help me. And so, if you look at the monthly report, we do it in two sections. Safety certification is the first section that you see. That's the first blue graph on page 46. And then the second half of that is the construction side. So if you start at the top, certification, that's all your testing, that's your systems, that's your train, the ATC, the SCADA, the integration, pulling all that together. And if you look at the graph we have in blue, you can see we're tracking over 10,000 items for segment 2. And so each month we provide an update. We meet with our contractors, we see what progress they've made, and then we review the test reports that come in. Sometimes we go out and do visual verification, but we certify that these items are complete from a safety perspective as well. So sometimes that goes a little beyond what they look at, including ADA compliance, things of that nature, but we go out, do 100% verification, we come back, we update our checklist, and these numbers on this graph get updated every month. As you can see, we are about 90% complete, so the bulk of the testing that remains will be the train testing that we're doing for segment 2, going into system integration, that's your train, SCADA, integrating with the stations, fire detection, things of that nature. If somebody pulls a fire alarm, it not only affects the station, but it should shut down train service to that station. So we test all of that, and then we'll go into trial ops sometime next year where we actually do a simulation of train functionality and just make sure that everything we've done is working correctly. So first half, safety certification. Second half is your construction safety, and that's this second chart at the bottom of the screen here. And so we categorize recordable incidents and then incidents that lead to loss of time. And that's the two columns you see on the right side of the graph. So what is a recordable incident? A recordable incident is anything that requires someone to go to the hospital and have to see professional help. Sometimes when you're out in the field, you may get a little nick or a scratch. Anything that first aid can heal or handle is not considered recordable. But if you have to go to the hospital, get seen by a physician, even if you go to the hospital and they check you out and say you're fine, still goes down as a recordable incident. And so in March of this year, we had two incidents. One was a concrete truck driver who backed into the ditch. I don't know if you remember that, was in the pictures. And so he backed in. We sent him to the hospital as a formality. He was released the same day, but because he went to the hospital, it still got marked as a recordable. Then the other guy strained his back. He was stepping out of a TPSS at Lagoon. Took a bad step, tried to grab the door as he was going down, and it caused him to strain his back, trying to break his fall. So he did go to the hospital, and it did lead to a loss of time for that incident. So if you look at this chart, two incidents, the truck incident and the guy who strained his back, only one of them led to the loss of time. And that's the three incidents you see in March. Now, if you look at this chart, other than those three incidents in March, every other month, zeros, which is exactly what you want to see in safety, which means we're out there doing our job, we're communicating with our safety professionals we have with the contractors, holding monthly meetings, task force meetings, site inspections, the system is working well. Our total incident rate, which we track at the bottom of the chart, is 0.75. And if you're not in construction, you may not know what that means, but if you compare that to the national rate and the Hawaii state rate, the national rate is 2.0. The state of Hawaii's rate is 2.1, and we're at 0.75, less than 1. So, yes, we are doing a good job, and knock on wood, I pray we keep it going. So,
Can I ask you a question? You talked about SCADA. Are you when you say security, is it just physical security or does it include like software and cybersecurity?
so only the software and cyber part of it. So we check the design, we make sure it's implemented correctly, but it's actually DTS who will pick up the physical security side of it.
Is there penetration testing done before we turn it over to DTS?
I mean, for cyber.
Yeah.
Yeah. So each of our systems should be standalone. So
Right,
SCADA,
right.
Your
Yeah.
surveillance system, even ATC, they're designed such that hackers can't get into them. And so we tested, part of our testing is one of our contractors showing us firewalls and things of that nature, the protections they use to make sure that they can't be penetrated from the outside.
Okay, but there's no independent company that comes in and does penetration testing for cyber.
It's part of the requirements. So I can look into it and tell you how they do it.
Yeah, if we could talk, if you could just send me an email, I'm curious about the cybersecurity part. Thank you.
On the core system side, that falls under the core systems contractor. They have a manual for cybersecurity and how that's managed.
Right, but it's more like these are the guidelines that you should follow and do all these things. What happens on more complex systems or systems that are like critical infrastructure, and I don't know whether this is considered critical infrastructure or not. Is it really?
Yeah.
Then there's usually an outside party that comes in and tries to get in and hack into your system, and then they find all these problems, and then like they always find problems, and then you go fix them. So mostly because what they tell you to do isn't always perfect. So anyway, let's follow up.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll be
cool.
happy to follow up and see
Thank
what
you.
I found.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Roger? Have any? No. Before you take off, sorry. And I want to echo, all the commendations that are being said here, as well as far as what we're seeing in reportable incidents. I have a little bit of a twist of a question. And I understand, and I'm assuming we're following standards of reportable incidents and whatnot. So, so let's take, for example, right, the cement truck. It's not a reportable incident, but it's a pretty big incident. So what are we doing to discuss, analyze, and maybe talk about with the contractors going forward to prevent potential reportable incidents that could have been worse, but luckily it wasn't as bad as it turned out to be?
So we hold safety stand-down meetings. And so when an incident like this happened, so first of all, this was a reportable incident. So we got flagged for this, even though nobody was hurt, even though the guy made a mistake. And so it's two things that happen. So internally in his company, number one, you get drug tested anytime you have an incident. And then they sit down with you and they go through the incident with you to kind of determine, was it things we could have done better, or did you just have a bad day today? So that happens automatically. But once it gets elevated to our level, our heart safety team, we decide if a heart safety stand down is called. It's called a safety stand down. Right. And that's where we stop work, we bring everybody together, we review the incident, we talk about what we need to do better. Is it communication? Do you need better tools? Do we need a different system to make sure this doesn't happen again? And so it's incident by incident. So what may work for one may not work for a different one, but yeah, case by case basis, so to say. And so for this incident, we reviewed the cones that we had out there. Was it visible? Is there anything we can do to make it better so he can see where he's backing up? Do we need more people helping him to back up and just guiding him in that process? So that's what we did for that incident. We held the stand down. I think we record meeting minutes for these stand downs. So if you actually wanted to dive into the details, we can make that available. But for every incident that we have, especially the serious ones, Safety stand down, no word contractor stops everything, bring everybody together. Let's review the incident as a whole. Let's see if there's any lessons learned that come out of it. Let's see if there's anything we can do better to keep everyone safe.
Right. So hypothetically speaking, let's say the driver didn't go to the hospital, truck tipped over, driver didn't go to the hospital, didn't get checked out, wouldn't have been a reportable incident. Would we have potentially called for a stand down, a safety stand down?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then him going to the it's not if you want to go to the hospital type thing. You have to go. Yep. So we can make him go. His job can make him go. But anytime there's a serious incident, you have to go. And that's for the protection of everybody, even though he may think he's okay. Let's just say he's on medication or something. So he's thinking he's fine. But, you know, other tests and actions may reveal he's not fine. We need to know that for the other people that are working with him as well. So, yeah, sometimes we take it out of his individual hands and we make the decision for him that you need to go get tested.
Okay, so,
For example, if he like didn't put the brake on and it rolled into the hole, and he wasn't in the truck, you could still get him tested because.
Yeah, absolutely.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, then I understand, you know, we have a process that doesn't just, we have a system in place that looks for preventative ways to prevent incidents from occurring, not just reportable incidents.
We try to be
Okay.
proactive more than
All right.
reactive. If we can stop it before it happens, that's what gets all the zeros on the graph that you see.
Okay.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
To, you know, Aaron mentioned he has taken over the director position for safety and security early this year in March. Aaron has been on the project for quite some time now, and you know he's been great to work with. He understands the work, the need, the project's needs, and understands the contractors too. So he's able to relate to the contractors while still, you know, making sure that our priorities are in line. So him and the team have been doing such a great job. Just wanted to note that.
So I'm going to add to that. When I first came in, we had two different contractors. Actually, it was a joint venture between two different companies. One did the safety and security, and one did the construction. And we were spending a lot of money on that. So we eliminated the construction one and asked these guys to incorporate and start to take on that task. And so there was some concern from our insurance that, well, these guys are safety and security, but they have the experience. So they're doing both, and it's showing in the records right here how low the numbers are. So we have one consultant now doing both jobs.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chair?
Yes.
I have one comment.
Yes.
So Aaron, I work with a few safety directors or manager at Hart. I just want to tell you, you articulated the Hart safety program the best. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I've been on this project, as Van said, almost 6 years now.
Yeah.
But when I came in, very bottom. So I worked my way all the way up and know, let's just say, what's in the closets behind the scenes, such that when I got here, this is what we need to do differently, guys, to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. I've been doing my absolute best. But as I told Lori when I started, if anything you see that we can do better, let me know. We're open to making it the best.
Wait, you've been here for 6 years, so you were here in 2018?
Right at the end of
Well, I was here in 2018. I never talked to you.
You wouldn't have known me.
No. Who were you working for in 2018?
Ralph McKinney.
Oh, you were okay, so I talked to Ralph quite a
Yes.
bit. Right. Okay, so I was never introduced to you. So are you with Hart now, or are you with a consultant? I know at that time it was Tracy Lawson. Okay, so you're with another consultant now. Okay, wow. It's good. Thanks, Aaron.
Roger?
Aaron, are you
Mike?
FTA certified? Are you FTA certified for safety?
Yes.
Good. How about your team? Are they all certified now?
So we all get our TSSP and PTCSP, which is two different certifications, but the FTA hosts training sessions, about 4 or 5 different classes for each of them. Everyone on our team has both certifications. And then in addition to that, PMP and World Safety Organization certified as well. So,
Very impressive.
And
You
no,
can't
he's
hire
not
him away yet.
interested.
You can't hire him away yet.
He's a contractor. You just go make a
I
contract.
know, that's what he's telling, that's why he's asking, no.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Aaron, we do have an opening.
See, I knew that was where he was going. I know Roger too well. This is totally, it's related, but kind of a strange question. I happen to know concrete. I represented those guys for a long time. So I'm just curious, concrete has a life, in the cement mixer, they're manufacturing as you go along. So in a situation like that, does that play, you obviously know where I'm going, because the question becomes, say the concrete is still good, does that become a priority? I mean, do you get somebody to put it into where it's supposed to go, or what happens? I'm just curious, because a load is a big load, and you can't have it sitting in there, because it's not gonna do very well after a period of time. So what happens to that?
So are we talking about the incident that
Yeah.
happened? Yeah.
Well, not necessarily the answer, but yeah. Well, I mean, how do you plan for that?
So I think in that particular incident, we didn't use that concrete and the concrete that was dropped. I think they pulled it back out and redid everything over from scratch just to make sure it all was poured at the same time and cured at the same time.
Good. I was just wondering about the PSI. For how long you let it rotate. Thank you.
Are there any national awards that you can apply for? I mean, this is a very, very good incident rate that you're reporting here. Less than half the national and half the state level.
So APTA does an award, but we can't recommend ourselves. But if somebody wanted to recommend us, APTA does an award.
I can recommend.
Okay.
I'm on the board.
Also does an award, and then construction also has an organization where you could do it from the construction side as well. So yeah.
Well, I hope you get one.
Thank you.
Should apply. Good idea.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I did have one other question, Vance, for you guys. Just going back a little bit to this items that we're working on and having to do with the stairs, and it is causing some potential delay. Can you?
Yeah, so the stairs at every single station, it was found that it doesn't meet ADA requirements for the rise and run and the height of the stairs. So what AGS or SDG did initially was, chip out the concrete, pull out the nosing, put the nosing back, re-pour, that top coat, skim coat, and use the trowel to put in, the grooves of that stair. They tried that multiple times and was not successful. They finally came to realization that they need a better solution. They looked at some of the stations on the west side, and LCC in particular has a stair covering that meets the ADA requirements in terms of like the tread and the grip on the stair. So that's what they're going to install in the stairs. That's an NCR, so that has to be addressed before any substantial completion can be granted for the remaining stations. All the other punch list items could be down to painting, scuff marks, cleaning the station, cleaning the glass.
Focusing on the stairs, though, is that going to impact our schedule at all?
Yeah, so they were initially, during the negotiation and the settlement, they were supposed to be done in February with everything. Because of the stairs and other purchase items that's pushing out, the delivery of the first two stations for those, the material for the stairs is October, which is a lot later than we expected. And then the final two stations in November. So it is pushing out their schedule. Doesn't impact at this point in time the core system schedule or the schedule to get to opening. And we continue to meet with SDG to push them to get that completed as soon as possible.
So, was it a design? Was it a design issue or what? I mean, we have inspections, right, during the design phase. We have inspections during the construction phase. And at no point did these inspections reveal these issues?
The issue came up quite some time ago. The NCR was issued and it was pushed off for quite some time. Something that they said, we'll deal with it later, and they pushed it off for so long that now, unfortunately, we're in this situation.
So what was it? Was it a design issue? Was it a
think it's an implementation issue.
So
You know,
they
just
didn't
the-
follow the design?
They followed the design, they just couldn't implement in the field. And from my understanding, talking to the West Side contractors, this was one issue or one topic that was brought up early on at the start of construction that, hey, this is going to be a difficult task to get these stairs to meet ADA requirements. So they focused in on that early on and made sure that they, specifically looked at that and implemented properly.
Yeah, what I heard from the West Side contractor was if you're trying to do massive one pour, one pour at one time, and the way the curing of the concrete, you don't have time. You're not, so they had to do it one by one by one. So they actually had to tear out the stairs on the west side on one station and redo it, taking their time. And that's, I think, what they should have done on this side. But remember, this is design build too, so it's all on the contractor.
So, okay, so it's being handled, but
But for us, lessons learned, I think we mentioned this in previous meetings, when we give an NCR,
Oh.
we need to be on them. I mean, Trevor, our QA director, is livid about this.
I mean, are we gonna potentially face the same similar issue in future?
CCGS, possibly, and
And well, this will become part of the lessons learned log that we have that we present to the CCGS contractor once they're on board. Here's some of the headaches we've dealt with. Please be mindful of these and make sure you take that into consideration when you're planning your work.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Appreciate it, Vance, Corey. No other questions. We can move on to agenda item number 4. Discussion on Hart's compliance with our procurement policies. Dan, I'm gonna need some guidance. I do have at least maybe 1 or 2 questions that I think need to be addressed in executive session. So if the board is okay, I'm gonna need I'd like to go into executive session pursuant to section 92-4, subsection 92-5A4, to consult with the board's attorney on questions and issues on a matter pertaining to the board's power, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. So I'm going to need a motion from...
I so move, Chair.
Thank you. And a second. Motion's been made and seconded. If any objections to going into executive session?
Chair?
It shouldn't be yes. Sorry, Natalie.
Yeah, so can you provide additional information on this? It's not really clear what is being discussed. It says with the Hart's, or the way I look at it, it says with Hart's compliance with the procurement policy. So is this regarding the state law, or is there some Hart rule that was that you're going to be talking about? Can you give a little bit more information for the public on this?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason of me wanting to go into executive session is actually to clarify whether or not, if I can discuss this, and if so, to what extent, and decide whether or not I'd want to pursue it. But my understanding of POC's responsibility is to monitor compliance with procurement, our compliance to procurement policy. So this is really just kind of intended to ask the question of our attorney and decide how to move forward, if at all, as far as the committee is concerned.
Okay. So, well, hopefully you can provide a little more information than when you get out of executive session, because I feel like we've talked about procurement and the procedures that would be involved, particularly with CCGS, over many months. So I'm not really sure what is going to be discussed. But with that in mind, I just would like to remind people for the record.
And Natalie, my intent isn't to, my intention is to be as open as possible with the information that we can be open with, without either violating any rules, any laws, or disclosing information that is still confidential. So I just want to, move forward, if at all, with as much sensitivity to all of that. It's
Okay,
not the
thank you.
intent, it's not the intent to, going into executive session is not intended to hide anything from the public. It's really just to understand what, if at all, we can or should move forward with this discussion.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Then I would just like to state again for the record that there's a discrepancy or a disagreement between Corporation Counsel and the Attorney General's office with respect to the confidentiality agreement that I have not signed. And so I understand that I will not be allowed into that executive session. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. With that said, can we go into executive session? I'm not sure if we're staying here or, okay. Let me know when we're clear. I'd like to call this Project Oversight Committee meeting back to order. We did enter into executive session and do want to report out that, I consulted with our attorney regarding issues related to sunshine law and pertaining to this particular noticed item. And based on those discussions, I'd like to defer this agenda item until further notice. So is there, any members have any comments, concerns, questions? Natalie, do you have any?
No, thank you. That sounds good. Thank you so much, Kika.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other testifiers online or in person before we move on to agenda number 5, which is adjournment? Okay, there being no further business, this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Order. It's 10:30 in the morning. I'm the chair. My name's Anthony Alto. I'll take the roll call first. Vice Chair is Ed Sniffen, is excused. Michelle Chun Brungraber.
Here.
Roger Morton.
Here.
All right, thank you. Is there any public testimony of any sort? Oh, my apologies. I should note also that the board chair, Colleen Hanabusa, the board vice chair, Kika Bukowski, and board member Natalie Iwata are also present in this committee meeting. I'm going to call up Joey Manahan to help us with the discussion of the Mass Transit Special Fund cap. And if I can explain it as briefly as I can, for the public who are watching, there is a cap placed on how much revenue we can receive from the state, and that the amount of monies that we actually receive from our GET taxes can exceed that cap. And so we wanted to find a way to resolve this so that we don't have to keep going back to the ledge to ask them to let us spend the money that we think of as already being ours. Is that not right, Joey?
So good morning, Chair and members. My name is Joey Manahan, Director of Government Relations and Public Involvement for HART. Thank you very much. So the Mass Transit Special Fund, was established in 2017 with SB 4, Act 1 of 2017 of that year. I know we're using the word cap for the Mass Transit Special Fund, but really, in that legislation, what we're referring to as a cap is really actually a ceiling that was set through an appropriation. And so every year, the ceiling is really based on the collections, and then on the collections of the general excise tax as well as the TAT. And then once our receipts are verified, and once they verify our invoices, the money is then allocated to the city and to the project. And so the ceiling really is based on the amount of funds that are collected by the state. And then once those are once our invoices are verified, then the funds are allocated to the project.
The problem being that there are times it hasn't happened as I understand it yet, but we could potentially be in a situation where in a given year, it has happened, but maybe before I joined the board, was it?
No, it's happened 22. What was the HB 28, whatever?
2380, we had a bill last year for an emergency appropriation for the carryover balances that were that didn't that weren't allocated to the project. My understanding as a result of the invoices not being verified yet, right? So once all the invoices are verified, then the funds can be allocated to the city and to the project, right? But it's not capped. There's no legislation that caps it, and I want to be clear of that. I researched all the legislation pertaining to HART, but for Act 1 2017, and as far as the Mass Transit Special Fund is concerned, there is no cap. It's just basically a ceiling based on, in 2017, it was an appropriation, but then in the subsequent years, it's the collections that set that ceiling. So depending on how much revenue is collected, that's where the ceiling is set.
So when I was saying it hadn't affected us, what I had understood was that there was money that had been received through the GET, and that we had invoices that hit this ceiling, you want to call it, not a cap, and even though the money was available, we still had to go to the ledge to the administration, the state, to actually secure those funds to cover those invoices, right?
Yes, because I think it was done, we had to do it within the same fiscal year, because I think those invoices had not yet been approved when the budget was being put together. And so this year, when it was addressed through the emergency appropriations bill, as well as in the fiscal year 25 budget, through the Ways and Means Committee. So we have the funds through FY25.
Right. But we don't want to be in a situation where we repeatedly have to go back for an emergency appropriation. So you've been working on a legislative fix, is that right?
I've proposed some language that may address this. So the Mass Transit Special Fund is established in statute. It's in Chapter 248 in dash 2.7, and there's a paragraph in there that I made some suggested language to amend if that's the will of the board. And I can, if we can, we have it on the screen, and I have some handouts if you wanted to.
Is this Ramsey or is it not? Joey, is this Ramsey or is this?
No, this is just in the statute. No, this is not in Ramsayer form. This I just pulled this off the internet, and that the suggested language is underscored.
Excuse me, can somebody send a copy of that document to me, please?
Yes. Natalie, can we get that too? Yeah. I believe they have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very simple fix by the looks of things.
But she doesn't have the document.
Right, no. Natalie has to see it, but
Can I ask Joey a question?
please, go ahead, Jen.
Okay, my understanding on the cap was that somehow the cap was amended. The original, there's always a cap on GET in whatever is appropriated. That's the first thing I understand. The second thing is that in Act 1, which was passed in 2017, Part 9, Section 17, basically set the $1 billion which you are referencing here.
That is correct.
And my understanding is that that provision was somehow affected subsequently. And that's the reason why it became a situation where the maximum or the cap became whatever was collected in the prior year. But that wasn't something that was originally set forth in Act 1. Act 1 had a cap of $1 billion, which we were not going to hit. So in my discussion with Ways and Means Chair, when we were doing the appropriation issue because of so what happened is that they hit the cap for a couple of years, which is more than what they anticipated. That became the amount, the 170 something million that we got in 2380 or whatever it was. But it was because there was an amendment to Act 1, Section 17. This is my understanding. So that's when we have this $1 billion. I mean, that's when we lost the $1 billion. So the question became whether we fix it by just simply reinstating the $1 billion, which is what you're doing here. But the $1 billion was originally in Act 1. For some reason, BNF did something to it. And that's my discussion with Donovan. So I understand what you're proposing. I guess my question is whether or not historically what we're talking about actually happened, or do we just simply go back and ask them to reinstate what was put in Act 1? Because Act 1 is $1 billion.
That would be up to the board, I would say, to determine, but
No, it's really who's going to go to the legislature and plead the case is what it comes down to, because that's what it is. If Act 1, which is a specific legislation that determines what it is that happens to, and the reason why Act 1, as you know, is a session law because it's expected to expire. Act 1 is not expected to live on because it's really time limited to 2030. So the question becomes, and this issue of the cap, the $1 billion comes from the body of Act 1. So that's my understanding of how it begins, and that's why when I looked at this issue, I thought the resolution was somehow to just simply, whatever they did subsequently, and I don't remember whether it was in provisos or was actually legislatively done, you may know better, that we go back to what Act 1 provided, which was the $1 billion. And that's why we didn't have the cap issue. It was subsequent to Act 1 in 2021 or whatever it was that they put in this cap, so to speak. It was tied to how much we were collecting. So my recommendation would have been, we just go back, eliminate that, and go back to Act 1 and just let Act 1 stand and we'll be fine. But in any event, I understand what you're saying. I just respectfully disagree that that's historically what happened.
So, Chair, is it your understanding that Act 1 has been amended, or that this change is simply as a result of BNF interpretation?
It was something like a BNF interpretation.
it is.
Whether they then convinced the money committees to put in a proviso to say, okay, from now on, the cap on the mass transit fund will be that. Because you have to understand, 2017 is when Act 1 goes into play, right? So how is it that all of a sudden we don't have an issue and we just have one, 2 years ago?
Yes.
And that's when we have to get, and the reason we have to go in for the basically emergency appropriation was because we had exceeded the cap. That was my understanding from Rick Keene. We had exceeded, what was given to us technically had exceeded the cap. And then as a result of exceeding the cap, we had the 2 years where it just carried over. So as we will get the money, there's no question, we get the money, but we just get it late. And unfortunately, what happens is that because of the cap, we only get certain amounts versus the whole, everything that's collected. Anyway, that's, with all due respect, that's
Yeah.
my understanding of how Act One and the Mass Transit Fund interfaces, and it was something to do with BNF.
And Chair, I understand what you're saying because that would make sense to me. There, I checked with Corporation Counsel. There is no legislation that, specifically capped it, but, it could have been a dialogue with BUF or,
Well, Act One,
proviso.
Section 17 says, there is appropriated out of the Mass Transit Special Fund established pursuant to 248-whatever, the sum of $1 billion or so much thereof as may be necessary for the fiscal year 2017-2018 for the Director of Finance to pay the expenses of the Rapid Transit Authority that are written, basically certified pursuant to whatever that statute is. The sum appropriated shall be expended by the Department of Budget and Finance for the purpose of this act. The appropriation made pursuant to this section shall not lapse at the end of the fiscal year or in which the appropriation is made, provided any amount that remains unencumbered on January 30, 2019 shall lapse to the credit of the Mass Transit Special Fund. So that's why I think that we had no problems until somehow that cap amount changed.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and it-
that's my understanding of what happened.
Chair, I have the utmost respect for your experience in the legislature, obviously. What do you think is the best fix for this?
We just simply go in and tell them, whatever BNF
Obey
did,
your
you
own law.
undo it,
Yeah.
and then we go back to Act One, and we have $1 billion, which we're not gonna. As much as I think the GET is a wonderful tax, and that's something that Rick Keene and I always debate over, whether we're we're saying we got enough. I think that the issue is really that's what we.
It's an interpretation, not a letter of law.
And one that we probably could take care of by way of a proviso. So when the 2380 came up this past session, I had already spoken to the WAM chair and the speaker and said, okay, you guys got to give us the money. So it's okay, we'll give you the money. But I said, but my real issue is the cap. And I said, I want you guys to take away the cap. They said it was kind of late to do that, but they take care of it in this upcoming session. So we need to take care of and I think $1 billion is something that we won't hit. We'll collect a lot of money because it's not only technically GET, it's also TAT because Act One created TAT too.
It sounds, Chair, like you're saying that we shouldn't resort to a legislative fix. We should go and beat up BNF.
No. BNF did get a proviso, so we have to undo the proviso or the legislation that they passed. I think it was a proviso, but it's something that can be, I think, done relatively simply. We just got to get in there early enough and figure out which is the better way to do it. I just don't think it's. And the other problem that we do have, which is part of Act One, which I don't think they're gonna give on, and Joey is correct. The problem is we have to produce invoices, and then they review our invoices. But they've been pretty good, from what I understand, as to the review of the invoices and when they release the funds. But well, did we get all the 125 released, Laurie? The one from the feds? Yeah, so it's this strange thing, and they copied what the feds do to us, so it's the same thing. But we should be able to, I think, figure that part out. But anyway, so my recommendation is that Joey, that you guys go see hand in hand, basically, the finance and the money chairs, and say, hey, well, we just want our money. What's the simplest way to give us our money? Do you just pull out a, because, you know, we're only talking about, guys, 2030, because that's when our money expires. So 6 more years. And the problem is that, like I said, Act 1 is a session law because it wasn't intended to last longer than that. So we should look at that. But anyway, that's my understanding, not to
Thank you.
disagree with you, but I disagree with you.
No, I think you're right about that. So
Roger. Yeah. Joey, I'm assuming that this method was probably at the request of BNF that they did it, and they made it in the form of an appropriation. And the appropriation so far has, maybe it's been, they haven't really estimated properly, but it's been close to what the estimate of the amount would be, albeit it's been short, so they've had to increase it. But your solution of adding $1 billion to it, would it inadvertently create a bureaucratic problem for BNF because it's an appropriation and might clash with the Constitution on the level of expenditure that the legislature can legally do? That's my concern, is that we think it would just clear it, and we're not going to get to $1 billion, so $1 billion will be fine. But would that have an unintended consequence for the state budget process?
that I would have to check on, and I don't know offhand the answer.
I don't think it would, because it's been in Act 1 since 2017. The $1 billion has been in Act 1 since 2017.
And Joey's
But
prepared.
has it been in the form of an appropriation?
No, it controls the appropriation.
Yeah, but once you make it as an appropriation, as the current practice, that my understanding is appropriations all add up to a top number.
No, well, you're talking about the expenditure ceiling that we have under the Constitution, but I think that what's really, it is, as far as the money chairs are concerned, what we are talking about is a cap. And that's what causes this problem that Hart had a couple of years from this year, when we had 2 years of basically carryover. So, no, I don't think it's an appropriation matter, because this is not technically their money.
Yeah, no, and I'm on your side, Chair. I think that if we did not have this process and we simply went with the old law of you collect the money and you give it to Hart,
Right.
that would be the best approach.
We can't go back to that, because for some reason they were very upset with us in 2017. So when they passed Act 1, they made the requirement, just like the FTA, that, you know, we have to give the appropriate invoices and they have to approve all of that. So that was part of their thing. So that's separate. That's separate from a classic appropriation, because they're not appropriating our money, because it's technically, legislatively by Act 1 determined that this money comes to Hart, whether it's the TAT or the GET. However, what they do to comply, my understanding is to comply with some constitutional requirement that the GET has to have a cap on it, so that the cap is the word. But anyway, that's my understanding of how this all got mucked up. But I think what we need to do is we need to find out exactly what's the easiest fix and the way that we're going to proceed. And I think, because Act 1 already said it, that's the faster way to do is to take everything else out and let Act 1 continue.
Michelle, were you going to say something?
I don't think I'm an expert. I just wanted to understand this ceiling. Is that what the certification statement is, or where is the ceiling? Where is it written down?
So that's what we're trying to figure out, right? I was trying to get that
Some
answer from.
proviso.
Yeah, so BUF wasn't clear. They just told me to check back, now about this time in August. But basically, it's in the statute itself. It's just based on the allocation, and then the collections, and then the allocation is based on the approval of invoices.
Yeah, but I don't see anything that states a numerical ceiling. That's what I'm confused about. Where's the numerical ceiling that they're using?
Oh, in this statute, it's not in here. It was in the original legislation, which was Act 1 of 2017.
It's in Act 1.
Yes, it's in Act 1 of 2017.
The ceiling is in Act 1, but it's $1 billion.
It's $1 billion, and that's what set the ceiling. Was that appropriation?
Yeah, it does sound like we need to have a little bit more discussion before we try to insert language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. So Joey, if I'm hearing and following you correctly, 1, 2, 3, section C2, that third paragraph down, where
Correct.
you actually have the inserted language.
Yes.
So everybody's calling it a cap, but is it, from what I'm hearing, that number may move, and it's based on what receipts are received and approved, and you can't exceed a certain amount. I mean, is that what really creates what is being termed as a cap? It's the process that we have to receive the receipts, review them, and approve them.
That is the process, yes. And so it,
So
You know-
that creates the excess of any amounts deposited and on balance in the special fund.
yes, so
They cannot exceed that.
yeah, they can't exceed whatever's collected, and then, approved, right? So once the invoices are approved, whatever they can't approve more than what they collected, basically.
So members, we have another committee meeting and a PIG meeting that we have to get done by noon. What I'd like to suggest is that I follow up on this with Joey and with the chair, given her legislative experience, and see if we can come to a meeting of the minds with the finance committee chairs in the ledge. Does that sound acceptable to everybody?
I have one other quick question, real
Go
quick,
for it,
Chair.
yeah?
So, in order to access these funds that we're talking about,
Yeah.
in excess of, is it something that we have to get legislative approval for, or is it something that can be administratively accomplished?
I think
Does it
it-
have to be done in legislative session, or can it be done administratively?
I think we would need to talk to the chairs, but I think it could be done administratively. I don't think we would need, personally, I don't think we need to amend the Act 1, 27, or the Mass Transit Special Fund, this statute. Again, there's no legislation that clearly caps it. So if it was done through a proviso or some other means,
So we're not necessarily restrained by a legislative action that's required.
unless it was done through proviso, then no.
Thanks.
Roger.
Just to follow, do you think the number that for the last few years has been put into the budget has been estimated by the state administration, or has it been independently determined by the money committees?
I think it's by BUF, because that's where the trail ended for me. I was trying to ask them how they set the ceiling, but I didn't get a response.
I would assume too, it would be BNF would have come up with an estimate and would have provided it to the committees.
Yeah.
But I don't know that for a fact either.
Yes, and so even on their worksheets, I was trying to figure out, how they did it per fiscal year, how they set those ceilings in per fiscal year. But we don't, I don't think we're gonna, our projections, I don't even know what the ceiling is, quite honestly, where it's at, right?
Yeah.
But our projections don't, for next year, I don't think take us up to the ceiling.
For the
so-
current ceiling or
For next year's, yeah.
for next year, so I get it, yeah.
All right, so Joey and I will talk to the money committee chairs, and if necessary, take it a step further and go to BNF, and then come back to the board, come back to this committee, and then to the board. Anybody got anything else to say? If not, then I'm going to adjourn this so that we can move on to our next committee. Thanks, Joey.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good Good morning. I'm Michelle Brungraber, Chair of the Human Resources Committee. Today is Friday, August 9th. We're starting at 10:56. So I'm calling the meeting to order. I'm here. Anthony Alto,
Present.
Roger Morton,
Present.
Art Tolentino is excused. Also with us is Chair Colleen Hanabusa, Kika Bukowski, and Natalie Iwasa. I'm going to call for any public testimony on any of the agenda items. Do we have anything?
No testimony, Chair.
No testimony. Okay, so Sandy, let's talk about the Hart personnel and vacancy update. If everybody could just kind of go to the tab in their book. This is the proposal, right? About how you guys wanted to like go over this stuff, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We did revise it to include, it's similar to that, we just added a new column.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is the one that's in a book, isn't it?
No, she added,
One
She
more
added a
column.
column.
I think Chair.
Oh, date
Hanabusa's been
position
asking-
vacated.
What?
The date position vacated column.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh my God, how long has it been open? That was the question that we had, right?
Yes, yeah, versus when we posted, that's the, all the way, the second to last column, the days it's been open. Thanks, Sandy, versus, but there's sometimes a difference between when it was vacated and when we were posting, so that's what we added that column.
Okay. I think that's a good add.
I think we did, and we deleted it, so I asked Sandy, please put it back in.
Okay. So currently we are showing a total of 16 open positions. Also 4 tentative offers, employment offers have been issued. Actually, as of yesterday, it increased to 5. We did get another tentative offer that was acknowledged. So this reduces our open positions to 11 from 16. On July 31st, we participated in a career expo at the Blaisdell Center. We transformed it into a one-day hiring event, and our leadership team was present with us to help us with the recruitment process. We were very successful in issuing 2 on-the-spot tentative offers. We did conduct interviews during that time, and these 2 tentative offers are included in the 5 that I mentioned earlier. As far as our ongoing,
Interrupt you for the question. If you find somebody and they match something down at the bottom, when you have future positions, you kind of have the flexibility to offer them those positions as well, right?
yes.
Do you keep that in mind when you're recruiting? You do. Okay, thank you.
Yes, so we are actually going through some interviews right now for those positions and doing phone screens as well. So with that said, continuing the phone screens for the candidates that came through at the job fair, there were a total of about 50 that I counted up. And then we're still continuing our review of our open positions on our job boards. As far as the future open positions that are in blue, in the blue section that's not posted, these are undergoing leadership review right now, and my goal is to get them updated and posted for the next HR meeting.
Sandy, can you talk
Yes.
about the Director of Finance position, that the note that says it's been reassessed and does not need to be filled immediately?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So before Rick went on his vacation, he sat down with myself and Richard, and he, that position, we actually created that position for Dean. When he was here, we combined finance and HR because he had that kind of a background. So we have since separated out, and it's just the finance. And in Rick's assessment, he does not think we need a director of finance. We have a deputy director of budget and fiscal, and we have another one for procurement. So that was his assessment, that we don't need a leader on top of those 2 guys already. They're doing very well in their current roles.
Do you agree with that?
I do.
So you're gonna remove that box?
I'm not comfortable quite removing it. Maybe
recategorizing it. So I want to talk to Rick a little bit more about that.
But right now you stopped recruiting.
And so CCGS won't impact the workload okay.
If for CCGS, if anything, it's just one invoice per month, and it's very structured on how they can invoice us.
Is there a deputy under him?
Yeah, that's where I have, right, Richard Oshiro is the
Yeah.
deputy of finance.
And then who's under Richard? Is there like
Oh,
a
no,
backup?
no, no.
I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, you have a director of finance, and then like Richard's kind of doing that job now, but if you had one, then you'd have two people, a primary and a backup, right? So who's under him?
So we have accountants under him.
You have a
but
what?
not Accountants.
Accountants.
Finance people under him.
Yeah.
But not really another deputy position under him.
Yeah, it almost seems like, I mean, it's more the fact that you have corporate knowledge under a single person, and you're kind of like one bad day away from, like not having somebody to do the work, right? So it's not really the position, it's more do you have enough knowledge within your organization that if you have a vacancy that you can, compensate for it. That's why people have deputies, right? It's kind of like the backup. So that's the concern more than that. And if it's accountants and one of them could do it, then that's fine. Or you're going to train one to do it or whatever it is. So I think it's more the overall plan that you need to create if you're not filling the position, right? So I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but it's sort of like if you really want to eliminate that position, then there's some jiggling that we'd like to understand in the overall org chart.
Yeah. Was it Brent Lewis who was his deputy? Was somebody else who was,
Richard took Brent's place.
yeah, Richard took Brent's place, right? So, and my understanding is Hazama also did procurement, HR, and ASB, is that right? ASO,
He
right.
had the HR under him, and he had all the finance
Right.
under him. Yeah.
So I guess, to me, as this project gets towards the end, and we're looking at, whether we're gonna have enough funds coming in and so forth, I'm kind of concerned that we don't have a more solid finance. I mean, it's too bad that Robert's not here, but I think the finance component of the project is a critical component. I understand that Richard's doing, I guess, Brent's position, right? He's not the director.
It was the CFO position prior. There was Ruth, then it was Brent, and now it's Richard. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of concerned because I think finance is a critical component. I mean, there's the construction part, but I also believe you don't have the money and control or understanding of the money and what we need to do. It's not a good situation. But I also want to know, Sandy, at this point in time, what's our total numbers? I mean, when we have the other org chart, on the last page, you have city positions filled, vacant, authorized. What's our numbers?
So we have 98. 90
Authorized.
authorized, is that correct? 98.
How many are filled?
So right now, we have 42 full-time positions that are filled. Out of those 42, 34 are personal service contract positions, 6 are appointees, and 2 are the 89-day contract employees.
89-day hires.
Yes.
Yeah, my wonders, okay. So of we were at 30 for personal services contract for a long time. Now, of the 4 that you have added, personal services contract, where are they on this chart?
The 4 that we just added last month
What's that what the four is?
We added 4 last month.
We didn't lose anybody?
We did. We lost someone in information systems, information specialist, excuse me. And we just lost one on August 5th. It was an accountant position.
So even with, and those two would have been personal services contracts?
Yes,
So
correct.
even with those two lost, we have 34 filled today?
Yes, 34. Mhm.
And the six, well, from number 17 to 31, which is what your, I guess it's description under review. Those have been under review for quite a while. So do you feel that we don't need those positions, Lauren?
We had a management meeting about a week and a half ago, and actually the last meeting Kika brought up, you folks have the 98 positions, do you really need them? And so the managers were tasked with eliminate unnecessary positions and go through what you have now, and is this what you need? These are the labels of the positions that we have. Is this really what you need? And so I forgot the deadline I gave to the managers when they needed to get that to me. I wanted to say last week, Friday.
So are you saying that of the 98, numbers 17 to 31, which is actually what, 14 or 15 positions, that we may not need the 15 positions?
So we have three categories. So the ones on the top is the high priority,
Right.
which is even categories even further. The green is top priority. The next blue was the second level of priorities, and then on the org chart, there's the remaining pukas. So actually, the managers were told, look at the org chart and everything under you. Tell me what you need, and if those are the right positions, if you can get rid of them or if you can recategorize them.
So, there's 42 that are filled, 15 that you're looking at for sure, to whether you need them or not. So it's a total of 57 out of 98. And then you have another 16 on top of that, which is 73. So I guess we're still 98, so it's 25 positions, right?
Yes.
So what about the remaining 25 slots?
That's what I told you about the managers having to look at the entire org chart, all 98, the unfilled of the 98 positions. What do you really need? Can we eliminate some of them, and can we recategorize some of them?
So I assume though, that at least the blue ones, you've given consideration to, that somehow there is, it's under review, and when assessment is complete. So these are at least being assessed, I guess, by HR and everything. But in addition to that, we have 25 positions that are not even on this list. Because I'm using the 31 plus the 16 plus the 42, and we still have 25, I think that's still out there. So the 25 are the ones you're saying you're asking all the other department head, whatever you call.
All of them.
To look.
Blue and the 25.
Right. I guess my concern is, I thought we were trying to build towards having more like a permanent workforce that can transition on the whole issue of rail. But it looks like we're cutting back potentially instead. So if your managers come back and say, we don't need the 15 here, and we don't need the 25, so that's another 40 positions. So we don't need them. They could potentially come back and say that.
It's not necessarily we don't need them. I think to Kiko's point, every month you folks are bringing up that you're 50% full, you're 50% full, and it's not lack of not trying. We are out there, like Sandy said. I mean, we're personally, all the managers and myself were there at the career fair. But instead of every month telling us that, well, Hart, what are you doing? You're only 50% full. Bring that number down, because the board has the authority to bring it back at any time. We can increase it at any time. So we would love to fill it, My priority has always been city first, but if not, we're backfilling with consultants until we can get the city staff. So
I guess that's my concern. I disagree with Kika, with all due respect, because I think that if you stop looking to fill the positions, it's just gonna be easier to backfill with HDR-related people or whatever, and it goes contrary to what I believe that the board has expressed as a policy, which is that we would like to see, basically city permanent staff. But I understand that, but I would be opposed to just simply eliminating the number because, you know, you keep coming in and saying you're 50% full. I mean, you're 50, you gotta keep telling us you're 50% full. What we can do about it, I don't know, but to me, it's not just because it makes us look bad because we're only 50% full. That just tells you the nature of what the recruitment is. So anyway, that's just my position. Thank you. Michelle, sorry.
Anyone else? Yeah. Go ahead, Kika.
Just, my name's been invoked several times, so I just feel like I need to clarify what I meant. My suggestion for even bringing that up was primarily to, you know, I think to Laurie's point, is to reassess where she's at, what her current needs are, and kind of reboot. And start from a base of what she needs at this point in time, and then build from there. I think there could be some positions that are currently on the books, so to speak, that maybe aren't necessarily needed at this point in time. And rather than just carrying those positions, my thought is that we could reassess, take a look at it, and come to the board and make suggestions of deleting some positions that are currently not needed, and then as they're needed, putting them back on. That was my suggestion. So it wasn't necessarily characterized as just taking them off the books so that we look better. It was reassessing what our current needs are and reflecting that in what our employment count is. And at such time that the Hart feels they need to replace those positions, then come to the board and add them back on, if that's the case.
Well, if that's your intent, then one thing that's necessary in that equation is how many of these positions are going to be backfilled by HDR or entities like that. Because I think what happens is that when you use those entities, you just don't have the, I guess, the compulsion to fill those positions, and you may not look as hard as if you were reporting it. So if, you know, you may be correct, Kika, and I would entertain supporting that position on the condition that none of those other positions that you say, well, we're not going to fill this or we're not going to need this position, is backfilled by a consultant.
Right. I guess my question is, hypothetically speaking, if we have a position that is currently on the books, does it prevent us from contracting it to an outside consultant or contracting firm? So we can do that already, but I mean, we
No,
also.
I think these are not, Kika, these are city authorized positions.
Right,
These are
Chair,
not
but
consultant positions.
what I'm suggesting is that we also got to consider that we're getting towards the tail end of the project.
That's right.
And it's going to be, it already is difficult. It's going to continue to get more difficult to attract and retain permanent city employees when Hart, at some point in time, theoretically, will be dissolved. And I don't know that those employees will necessarily automatically transfer to the city. I don't know what that answer is. So we need to take that into consideration and start to taper off.
So you think CART will be dissolved? You think that there'll be a charter amendment that's going to be proposed?
I'm saying that at some point, Hart could be.
Well, that's different than saying Hart will be
I
dissolved.
didn't say it would be. I said it could be.
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard you as saying.
No, I said it could be. So we need to look at tapering off. If this project is coming to an end and Hart was not intended to be a permanent fixture, we need to start looking at tapering off. If that's what we, if that's a possibility, and then whatever we need to finish the project, we get back down to our basic needs and then build from there. That's what I'm suggesting to consider. Chair.
Roger.
I know I've been in this rodeo before where we've had organizations that have run transit and have had permanent city employees in them. In fact, when that project was terminated, those that have permanent civil service employment are entitled to a job. And I know in my department, they had to scramble to basically place people in positions simply because they were required to find a job for them. So that's a reality of the civil service system, that if you are a civil servant and a project like this terminates, then you are entitled for the city to find an appropriate job for you to go to. And I do share Kika's concern. I think that we are slimmed down pretty much, so I really don't want to suggest that we should slim down anymore. But I do share the concern that at this point, the mandate for HART is to get to Ala Moana Center, and without the finding additional funding, we're going to be hard pressed to expand beyond where we're at right now. So, I mean, it's a reality that that I think we should be aware of.
Chair?
There's another reality, which is one that you've often raised, Roger, which is the idea of transitioning HART into a new agency combined with DTS, and we haven't had any kind of formal discussion about that. I don't know if...
Well, there is a charter commission that is being formed, 6 members appointed by the mayor, 6 members appointed by the council, and those types of high-level organizational discussions would be the purview of a charter type consideration. They're the highest level of city government is the charter.
Correct. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that we've had no input in that because we haven't created a pig or whatever we would need to do, and maybe that's something we might want to consider. I know we've got a lot of pigs, but I mean, obviously it's a huge issue. I mean, it is likely to be an issue before voters at some point or other, I think.
I think it will be an issue at some point.
I'll remind you that the 2016 charter amendment, which is the last charter amendment that we've had passed that affects HART, was pursuant to basically a charter commission. And that's what, and it is an appropriate entity by which to determine where and how it's going to look like.
Chair, oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. So I agree with Kika's concerns, and I wonder how many of these positions are relatively short. So, what I've heard at City Council, for example, is that they have somebody on staff and they can't get rid of them, or, we have these quote unquote warm bodies that we can't get rid of because of union agreements or that type of thing. So I just wanted to mention that, I think there's a little bit more flexibility with having the contractors backfill the positions. So I'm not sure how many of these would be in that type of situation, but I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
The reason why I feel that we should eliminate is because these positions are, with the exception of the 6 appointees, are personal services contracts. So they're basically for 1 year. So they're not civil service. We haven't gotten to that point yet. I would love to see us transition the more permanent people into civil service, but they're not. So what we're talking about is not listing people or positions that are really personal services contract, which is a year. So they don't have rights, which Roger is referring to. The 6 are kind of different, but everyone else is personal services. I think, Sandy, are you personal services? Yes. Even Sandy is personal services. So with the exception of the 6 on top, everyone else is personal services.
Tatiana. Right. You have any others that are civil servant? About 10.
That came initially.
10%. Well, that would be about 4 or something, right?
That are not filled.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think we have, because I think there was something in the original charter that they could transition and that was it. And then that was, so we don't have a lot. That's my understanding. We don't have a lot. We don't have really civil service positions. They are personal services contracts, which is different. That's 1 year. So, and any of it, that's why I feel that to the extent that we can continue to affirmatively recruit, I would like to see us affirmatively recruit, but with a charter commission coming up, I agree. That's gonna have the discussion about how or what Hart looks like in the future.
Just to follow up, I mean, and I totally understand the insufficiently short to allow and it probably is an impediment to good recruitment because people have to look at they got a 1 year. To me, the issue is that the 1 year mandate is the flaw, and that we should be able, even if we have personal service contracts, we should be it would make more sense if the terms were longer than 1 year.
We asked.
That if they, I know it says we say we can't, but
It's ordinance.
I know it's a HR rule, but
No, it's not a rule, it's ordinance.
I think it could be a charter issue as well, that there would be, but that is, in fact, the issue is that there is an ordinance that prohibits any contract longer than 1 year. That ordinance obviously was never intended to apply to an organization like Hart. It was intended to apply to a normal line department of the city where city department heads might take a contract position when the expectation was that the function would go on indefinitely forever, and there was a proper view that these should be permanent civil service. But I don't think that the rule itself was ever intended to apply to what we've all stated is a temporary organization or might be a temporary organization. So I hear that it's 1 year. It's 1 year for us too. I go through it all the time. But I think it would be worthwhile at some point, as we discuss the way things are, that for an organization like Hart, where the project is a multi-year project, maybe 5-10 years, and that if we are going to have government workers working on them, and we do have contracts, that it makes more sense that those contracts be for a longer term.
Anybody else? My comment is, we jiggled the org chart a lot before we brought it to the board, and we thought we had it right. If we don't have it right, then we can change, right? But we have not started CCGS, and so as we go through and start to say, I need this position, I don't need this position, in addition to saying, well, you can't just switch it with a contractor because that costs more, that's going to impact the program, right? And maybe we do that because we can't recruit and it's an important position. But, if it's just something that we haven't filled yet and we haven't really tried, then I don't see us saying, oh, it's like one of the bottom ones off the chart and like, I'm going to use a contractor instead. I'm like, okay, that's off limits. But I would say that the managers really need to look 18 months into the future when we're doing design, when we're doing hot and heavy, like stuff in town, when we're building CCGS, when we're trying to turn over segment 2, all those kinds of things. And that's an important factor in terms of how many people they really want to try to have. You guys let us know after you've gone through the exercise when you're ready to talk about it, and we'll put it on the agenda. But it'll probably take some time, and it's worth doing. I don't know if I'd rush it, but, we're kind of already in August, and it's probably time to start thinking about the org chart for next year, right? And so we can kind of tie it into that, if it's okay with you, Lori. We'll tie it into, I don't think any of these things need to get done immediately, right? So if we tie this process into the bringing the organization chart and the numbers to the board in January, then I think that works out, actually time-wise, works out pretty good. Do you agree? Okay, so let's do that, and we'll bring it to the board after they've had a chance to, look through it, justify it, talk to leadership, and jiggle it around. But we'll bring it through a normal process through the HR committee that we use to bring the org chart to the board every year. Okay? Thank you. Okay, great. I think I forgot. Well, I called for public testimony, right? So we're just going on to the next agenda item, and it is Hart Board of Directors Public Relations Function. So thank you, Sandy. I think you need to stay because there's one topic. So in your package is the work-based scope. And I'll be honest with you guys, it's really different than what I would normally see in something like this because it has people's names on it and stuff, not just positions. It's really a little bit different. So we asked for a briefing from you guys in terms of, kind of like what you do, what you've been doing, and potentially like what your ideas are in terms of how you can support the board, because we think that there's a good synergy and there's an opportunity to potentially not have to have a public relations function for the board. That's kind of where we ended up with. So we wanted to see where you guys were. Thank you.
Thank
Floor
you.
is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm Jennifer Bowers with Payne Communications, and this is Kevin Witten, the Vice President with Payne Communications. To start with your first question, what do? We started working with Hart in specifically Joey's office in May of 21 because they were getting so many media inquiries, multi-part questions. It was just a lot of work and public records requests that were coming in. And so we came on to help with that, but also then to really craft strategic communications outreach to different stakeholders with a focus on media, of course, to place positive stories. Those positive stories would be about the people at Hart, the board itself, accomplishments. And so in doing so, we have been working with you guys now for 3 years and also working with Mayor's office to lead events such as the FTA's acceptance of the recovery plan in September of 22. We also led the communications with the full-scale exercise with first responders in October of 22. And then again, working with Mayor's office to plan the handover of segment 2 to DTS. We also helped out with the opening. We did media ride-alongs under DTS, and we also helped with the grand opening day to just help coordinate with media. The other thing, we definitely obviously then have worked with DTS, we work with the Mayor's office, and we also work with Hitachi to develop these positive stories. The other thing we were tasked with initially was developing almost a roadshow, a speaker circuit to get Lori and leadership out into the community to rebuild those relationships that could have been a little adversarial or negative perception just about the project in general. And so we did that usually in the first year, but then moving into the second and third years, we've really focused on our communications with all stakeholders, but media in particular.
I just want to add that we've also been working with the board since we came on board in May.
We have metrics.
Yeah. So we have actually been working with the board this whole time. We worked through Joey, but we developed the media stuff, the media releases, materials. Statements that Lori puts out in regards to the board. To board members, incoming board members, outgoing board members. So we've done 18 different media news releases and media statements in our time with you all regarding board under them. And then we've handled board of directors media-related media inquiries, working with Joey, who then works with Cindy to get those out. In the first half of this year, we've done 8 of those.
I think because you work through Joey to Cindy, it's probably not as obvious that you're working with the board kind of thing, right? I mean, I think that's what's kind of going on. And so, Cindy will talk to Joey about something going out, and then you guys might do it, but we don't interact with you. We interact with Joey through Cindy. And because I see Colleen going, what? Right? Yeah. And I think that's kind of what's going on. Are you in phase 2 now? Have you completed phase 1?
We're really just focused on media relations at this point.
So it's just phase 1 right now that you're working on?
Correct.
And have you done anything for phase 1, number 2, or number 3, or number 4?
I don't know if you move it up, I can see what it is. Yeah, we executed on number 2. We still execute on number 2 with awards. And then crisis media protocol, we were not tasked with that.
And so it's really specific in your contract to like submit Lori Kahikina? I mean, the names
other
are the things that's really kind of throwing me.
Oh, no, not Lori in general. It's
But
just.
it's in your scope. This is your statement of work, basically.
Right, but we do so much work every month where we don't bill for, that we focus only on the media relations as that's the most pressing thing. And in an average week, we can get 10 media inquiries or 12 media inquiries. And so having to just do that, because let me explain how it works. A media inquiry comes in, maybe say 10 or 11 in the morning. We have to then go and find all the answers to the questions. And sometimes that can be multiple departments that we have to work with. We then have to craft the answers to the questions, work with Joey's team, then work with the department heads for approval, and then it goes to Lori.
No, I applaud that that's part of your scope, and I think that that's a really difficult, time-consuming job. I think I was asking about the other ones. I mean, the normal kind of PR media thing is. I mean, in a statement of work, you know what I'm saying? It's
This was
unusual.
this is 3 years old, right? We haven't issued, that was from 3 years ago.
Well, why was it ever in there like that? You know, kind of thing. Instead of just saying heart leadership or something, it's just really awkward to me that would be in a statement of work.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Okay, crisis actions are billed separately, correct?
No, we never have done that yet. We keep everything with it. Yes, because we feel this project is so important to the city. I personally feel it's so important that we get the rail built, that we have not charged additional for crisis actions.
Can you give me, have you done crisis media? Have you worked with Hart about crisis media? What's the latest thing you guys have done, the last couple of things under that scope?
Well, I don't know what you would consider a crisis or what you wouldn't.
They have not done anything under this section.
Create a crisis communication matrix, internal communication facility?
One.
That's it. Phase 1, number 1 is what they've been doing for us.
Okay, I understand that. And maybe some of the phase 2 might have kind of come into it because, you know, speakers engaging with the community, everything
Speaking
else like that.
engagements, we did do during the first year because it was a way to bring Hart leadership back to the community and really have one-on-one relationships, which are so important.
And when you've been describing it, it does sound like, you know, it's sort of like, well, I'm taking this as, it's not time and materials, or hours, it's like you're doing it as a job with scope for fixed price almost.
Correct.
But it's not that kind of contract, is that correct? It's not a fixed price contract with this.
It's a fixed price.
It is a fixed price.
Yeah.
It's fixed price and the scope of services is guaranteed in this contract, or it's like, this is sort of the idea of what we're doing?
That was the idea of things we could do, different strategies, but we really focus on media relations because that is such an overwhelming portion of this job. The amount of media inquiries that are received not only for Hart, but for the board does receive them too. And again, when you say you never have worked with us, that's because we're behind the scenes. We like to stay behind the scenes and put our clients forward.
So I guess I want to ask, you know, kind of our board members that are sitting here, how do we think this can help? Whether we think that within the scope, any inquiries we get, I mean, you're kind of saying you're already doing it. There are things that we might want to add to it that say, you know, more like the services that you do to build trust and goodwill on Hart. We don't really have a trust and goodwill of Hart, the whole thing, including the board, you know, if you could kind of include us in that kind of stuff, it's like, I don't know, it seems like we get bad press sometimes and we don't know how to respond because it takes you know what I'm saying? So, Colleen, do you have any comments?
Your fee schedule, not to exceed allowance, 207,500, is that a year?
That was for the initial, if I remember correctly, year through December, is that right?
So,
No, through the,
and I guess the thing that bothers me is that you are HDR.
Correct.
You're HDR consultant.
Correct.
Because when I look at Joey's org chart, you're under HDR. You're an HDR.
Correct.
So I assume that whatever billing you do technically goes to HDR,
correct.
right? And HDR then sends it on as it would any other like construction consultant kind of situation. Is that how it works, Joey? You're in charge. So do you approve all their billing and then?
I do approve the invoices monthly, and then it goes up the chain.
And how detailed are your invoices?
They're pretty detailed. I mean, with the scope of work that's pretty much here on phase one.
We send a client results report every month along with our invoice. And the invoice is 8,060 plus GET.
No.
Yeah.
What did you say? You send a what?
Client results report.
Oh, I see. And then how do you determine your results?
We go through everything that's happened and we say what the like the metrics sometimes with the media stories, if we were able to sway things and turn the tide for something. It's a forward-looking document as well to show the status of specific initiatives so that we know what's coming down the pike.
So do you feel like the board's major function under the charter, we have oversight responsibility and we have the budgeting responsibility, which is basically we control all the money, right? So I guess the question to me becomes, do you see yourselves in a potential conflict? Because we don't necessarily always agree. So, you know, we have oversight, we want certain things done, and you're there basically under this. It seems like you report to Joey and Joey sends it up to Laurie. It doesn't come to us. We don't approve your money.
Correct.
So do you foresee that you may be in a conflict situation as to the board, what the board wants, and what you may think through Joey and to Laurie, what they want? Especially because we don't have any say because you are an HDR employee. You are an HDR consultant. You're not a board. You're not with the board, in other words.
I think that's a very good question, and I think it's more the comfortability that the board would have in terms of your relationship with Hart. Obviously we are contracted by HDR, which is under Hart, but I don't really, in the past 3 years that I've seen, I don't really envision that being an issue because I don't think the board and Hart have had big conflicts. I think you guys definitely have your own separate roles, and that's very important, but I think you try to work together well.
So do you feel that if the board feels that we're not comfortable with this, because, you know, we're accustomed to basically, we control the budget. We control, for example, as you may know, that the board controls, until the board says this is an official statement of Hart, no one, including the executive director, can take a position contrary to what the board has said is the official position of Hart. Do you find that to be problematic? Because it may be contrary to what.
Well, if that's the way it's set up, then that's the way it should be. So why would it? I don't understand why it would be problematic.
So you would be able to tell both Joey and Laurie, you can't take that position because that's not what the board has said is the position of Hart.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a discussion.
We don't put out statements without the board's approval. The statements that we put out are purely operational, what is happening. We don't put out a statement that we're gonna go to the ledge and fight for the extension of the GET. We make it very clear. you make it very clear that we can't do that. We need board
You've said
approval.
that in the past. You've said that we gotta get
My
GT.
personal opinion, if someone is gonna ask me that we have to, I mean, how are we gonna get to UH? We would probably have to extend that, but I do make it clear that's the
But
board's
you
authority.
understand that, like for me, I'm the board chair. So there's always an assumption that I speak for Hart. With you, it's the same thing, that you are the executive director, so you are deemed as speaking for Hart, right? So my question to Pan Communication is whether or not they would find that if we take conflicting positions, how would they technically handle that?
You want to say something?
We primarily respond to media inquiries. And we also distribute news, milestones that are positive and beneficial for Hart, major milestones. And that's our lane. And
Yeah.
that's,
So how would you do
yeah.
this? How would you do the, say, we say, okay, we're gonna have one media person. How would you do when you say you're gonna distribute things? I mean, it's usually the inquiries are there and you have to respond. How are you gonna incorporate the board? Because the board is the policymaker. So it's our opinion that.
Well, I think how we would work together, because I agree, if you were to get another PR entity involved with the board, then that creates much more coordination and making sure, and it's a lot more time and it just burns through more time. So I think we would want to meet with the board on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis and just talk about, if you're trying to get positive stories out there, then we want to know what additional positive things that we might not have heard of yet from them that the board is doing.
I guess the question is not that. If you're doing something that they require a response from the board, then the question is, how are you going to interface with the board on a, on a basis that makes that response something that you can do?
Well, I would think we would work with Cindy, because that's what we've kind of done behind the scenes through Joey in the past. If that's what you all would like to do, it's usually best to have one single person. But that's how I would envision it working, unless you all had a different idea.
You look for media inaccuracies when
Yeah.
you go through
And we
it?
and we correct them.
Have you done that with the board? Information, if they say something about somebody on the board or the board's actions, do you
Yes.
also look for those?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Anthony, you had a question?
I'm going into delicate territory now, but you said there hasn't been a conflict between the executive director and the board, but actually very recently we did have one. I mean, the executive director accused the board of bullying her. And I'm wondering, you said you've not been involved in crisis management. I saw that as a bit of a crisis. You weren't involved in that at all? You weren't providing media advice?
We did help the media with that one. I didn't see it as a crisis such as like someone getting shocked and dying on the, third rail or something. I was thinking of that when you meant crisis. But yes, that was it's like brothers and sister argument type thing because you're two entities. But yeah, we did.
So you were providing media advice to the executive director during that process?
Yes.
You were sitting in on the television interviews, for example?
I don't think we sat in on any
What are you
interviews.
referring to? What are you talking about that you guys were giving me guidance on?
No, we just, when the media inquiries were coming in and we were like working with Joey to get the answers back.
Inquiries come in and then
Yeah.
they're scheduling the interviews, but
Yeah,
they're
we
not
weren't,
giving
we
me-
weren't like,
Going to the board and
we
saying-
weren't saying you should do this or you should do that, not at all. It was things people kept calling in and they usually call me, Kevin and Joe.
They're more procedural. It's not like we're giving Lori talking points. Basically, we're like coordinating between media and Hart and the administration and going through Joey to do this.
You set up interviews with Spotlight, for example, that sort of thing?
Long-term ones. So the
Long-term
request
ones.
comes in
The re-
through them.
Joey.
We want to go on Spotlight, and actually I've invited Chair several
Yes.
times to come with me.
Yes.
They
that's
send
true.
the request to them. They
Yeah.
aren't going out actively saying, hey, let's put Lori on Spotlight. The
No,
request
that
is
comes
coming.
in from
Yeah.
UG.
We're reactive.
Yes.
Yeah, the proactive stories would be like, the positive stories would be like the bowls with FestPac and pushing that out there. And then there were some other positive stories that,
Oh, well, like the first scale, or sorry,
Full scale.
full scale first responder exercise.
Yeah.
Things like that. Those are proactive things that we go out and we get the media to come, show up, get everyone in line so that
Everyone's
we can,
happy.
get the 3 different stations to interview
We also,
different, whether it was DTS, working with DTS and Hitachi at the same time on those.
yeah, that was like, we did, when we first started, we got a really nice front page story on the Star Advertiser regarding Hitachi and their training program with Leeward Community College to create these high-skilled jobs that people, they could train people for, and they could work for the rail. But we were the ones who put that together and worked with Hitachi to try, and Leeward Community College, like stories like that we're proactively pitching.
So for example, I suspect, because I've just heard this, that you do not have a really good relationship with Civil Beat. So when they call, like they call Michelle directly, they call, I think they've called even Anthony, they've called me, they call us directly because they can't work through quote HART. So I guess my concern is that when we say, okay, let's do this, because it makes logical sense that we should have one media company, and that the media company, however, has to understand who the policymakers are for HART and who the responses are, that if you don't get along with an entity and you get along better with, say, Nakasu or someone at Star Advertiser, you get along with the Channel 9, whatever Channel 9, Hawaii News Now is, then I can understand, because it's always that kind of situation. However, how would you handle that, where people are asking specifically for a comment from Michelle or Anthony or myself even, that they want to know what the position is? How would you handle that?
Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify something. We do have a good working relationship with Kevin Dayton, so I don't know where you heard that, but you know, Kevin calls me on my cell all the time, and we get him what we can when we can, as quickly as we can. If a situation came up like that, and he wanted to speak with Michelle and he wasn't calling you directly, I would call Michelle and I would loop Cindy in, because she's, you know, our main point person, and see if Michelle wanted to do the interview and try to coordinate that, or you, or Anthony, or anyone on the board.
It's the same procedure that we use when media asks to interview other HART leadership. We would work with Joey to coordinate with that other position, that leader, and coordinate the interview. And it would be the same thing for a board member. If media was looking to get in touch with a board member, we'd probably work with Cindy and Joey to get in touch with that board member. And it's just an easy coordination of, are you available on Wednesday at 1? It's pretty simple.
But if they're asking for an official position of HART, that's not enough time for the board to form an official position.
Well,
At that point, we'd say, can we get more time so that we can get you what you need?
media also requests like things in 2 hours or 4 hours. So we have to be very flexible with turnaround times. And so if you don't work with them in that way, they'll go ahead and
Sometimes
do the
they'll just do the story
without you.
without
So
your, and they'll say, no, they were,
So there's
didn't
a-
have.
No, I understand
there's a
that.
tightrope to walk with how you engage as well, right?
And sometimes though, you can get media to hold a story depending
Yeah.
on the nature of the story, especially if they want to have a more accurate or comprehensive picture to get the information of what Michelle's position would be or your position would be.
I actually want to say too that I do engage with Civil Beat, multiple reporters at Civil Beat, and done so for a few years now. And I think that it constitutes a relationship, and I wouldn't say it was negative.
You would say it was negative?
I would not
not say
would
it
not
was
say it
Would
was
not say
negative.
it was negative.
No.
So how would the financing be affected? In other words, you basically have a contract not to exceed $207,500. Is this still the contract amount?
It's I think it's $8,060 per month plus GET.
So what about all these other things?
We tried to parse it down because we were truly focusing on just number one.
The fixed monthly fee.
Correct. And number one being the media relations, whether it's proactive or reactive. In terms of how you would do it with the board, that's a great question. I don't really know. I think that would be a topic of discussion to figure out, what kind of budget we would need and where it would come through, what kind of reporting we would do, because we feel very strongly about providing that client results report, which can be 3 to 5 pages every month.
And the thing is for the board would not go through HDR.
Correct.
The board would be a contract direct.
Correct. That's what I would think would probably be the easiest, because I don't think if you can run it through HDR, it would make no sense.
You know, we wouldn't do HDR.
So, going back to this recent situation where there was a flood of negative media stories, a lot of them inaccurate. Did you at some point talk to somebody and say, hey, you're getting a lot of bad PR and we got to do something about this? It's inaccurate.
You mean to you all?
Yeah.
To the board?
Well, the media will.
If we have specific things, if it's painted in a negative light, but it's factually correct, there's not much you can do about it. It's correcting factual mistakes that you do with the media. The other thing you can try to do is minimize stories as well, by not responding, but then, and hoping the cycle goes out. But sometimes not responding is worse, because then they go and try to ask all sorts of different people. And everybody knows that at times conflict will be something people want to read about, and will create engagement online for the comment section. So yeah, there's ways to minimize that. And we would go and we would work with you all to figure out, okay, what's the best way to handle this? Which interviews do we want to do? How do we, try to get through this news cycle as quickly as possible?
Like, just because you may not like the way it's portrayed doesn't make it not factual. And that's something that we came up against when we first came on board with Heart, because how much negative sentiment was out there, right? We came up with, but you can't say that you can't print that because we don't like what you're saying. No, if it says 6 miles and it's supposed to be 5 miles, you can say, you said 6, it's 5. That's where you're at with corrections, these stories.
So what are your thoughts on how, if the board said, oh yeah, it seems right that we probably should use the same company, how would you structure the scope for the board?
We would develop a scope of work and submit it to you. But in order for us to have a good working relationship, I would think it would be important we have regular meetings to determine what kind of proactive news you want out there, things the board is doing, ways we can coordinate with Heart as well, joint announcements that you can do together. That's how we would work with you.
I think our problem is going to be sunshine, because I'm not sure that would be, oops, our lawyer's gone. I don't think that that's necessarily something that would be confidential. So,
in terms of them coordinating what's going out.
Right.
Right. That's the challenge, right? The challenge is when it's internal to Heart, you can coordinate with all the different entities before the release goes out. If there's something that the board wants to say or correct, then either Colleen has to do it by herself with one other person, or we have to kind of have a meeting that we call that has an agenda that gets put out like a week before, and we have to all do it in public. So we're saying it anyways. So that's kind of the challenge to you of how you would scope it. Some of it might be you interview board members independently, you come up with a position, you work with Cindy and Colleen, and it actually goes out as one statement kind of thing. But that's the question to you, is not how you would do it, but for you to think about like the coordination that would be required and how you would meet sunshine as well as all of our other constraints, while at the same time we want to be part of the good news from Heart, and we want to add to it, right? I don't think anybody wants bad news. We want to address the bad news, which is what you do, but we want to do it in a coordinated way while still complying with sunshine.
Right, and that's why when we did the handover to the city and we did the FTA accepting the recovery plan, and we invited Chair, we made sure that because we needed someone from board leadership. That's why when we get these requests from Yunji, we've invited Chair to go on as well, because it shows a really good working relationship between the board and Heart to come together on these media opportunities, and because you guys are working together. So we have done that, and we would continue to do that.
Kind of. I mean, in some ways, because you work for Heart and the board kind of sits up here, I think the thought is, well, if an interview comes in, it would have probably worked out a little bit better if there was a direct interface to the board that you could have asked Colleen for an interview from, versus Lori going, hey, Colleen, you want to come with me to this interview? You know what I'm saying? It reflects differently. on Colleen's availability if you're coordinating directly with
Yeah,
Cindy. and
Michelle, I
Colleen.
think Yunji reached out directly to board chair as well. Yeah.
Okay,
So.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I think if everybody's okay with it, that's what we want you to think about is how would you scope it? What would the tasks be? Just 5 of them or something, just a few of them, especially the ones that interface with Heart that you could do jointly, and like, how much is it gonna cost? That's
Well,
kind
my
of what we're
question to
looking
you is
for.
obviously you're looking for more positive news for the board. That's your goal. I mean, when I meet with a new client, the first thing I ask is, what have you done in the past? What are you looking for? What are your goals? And then we can come up with our communication strategy based on your goals.
You know, the goals are kind of to implement what the charter tells us to do in a way that is seen as effective and contributes to the organization. That's all we're trying to do is like just do our job, right? We're all sitting here trying to do our job, but in some ways, because the job is oversight, the job is in a little bit of conflict with some of because it's oversight, you got to ask sometimes penetrating questions or something, right? Do you watch all of the board meetings and committee meetings?
I actually do.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
I
So that's one of the important things, right? I'm like, if you said no, I'd just be like, well, how do you know what we said then?
No,
right?
no, Kevin watches every
Yeah.
single one, and I watched most of them.
Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, I think then that since your goal, you said, is that you want to be seen as implementing what the charter tells you to do. So when you have significant milestones as a board, we would want to proactively push that out. That would be first order of business right there. And that's why a regular meeting would be important to find out where are these milestones coming up? Where are these achievements that you guys have made as a board, and how do we get that out most effectively?
I also have a question on things like when we do releases like FTA's acceptance of recovery plan. Why don't you feel that you're included in the good feelings about that release? You Heart or one Ohana, aren't you part of that Ohana?
Actually, I mean, the
Like,
mayor was.
you should feel good about
You
that.
know, was integral to doing that too. When he called everybody into his
Yeah.
office and like started working the recovery plan with everybody too. So there was like a big team, right? I mean, I don't think we actually advertised who was on that team.
Actually,
anywhere.
no. In all of our materials, we usually have a nod to Chair for all the
Yeah.
great work she's done. Yeah, we do it as a one Ohana, Heart Ohana.
I mean, every news release that goes out that's on a milestone, the public does. I don't know. I don't feel that the public sees a split. The public sees Heart as Heart, and you
As
guys
Heart
are
and the
working
board,
together to
too.
build a
And
project,
that-
right? So every news release that goes out, how many so far this year? 12. How many last year? 26. How many in 2022? 56. Every one of those is a win for
No, I don't
all of
disagree that
Heart.
all those are wins.
For you
I mean, I'm
guys.
not saying that. I'm just saying that maybe the board members aren't coordinated in those kinds of releases like the rest of Heart is,
This is correct.
right?
Yeah.
You coordinate releases on information, and we the board members may not see that. It might just be with Cindy, and so there's a portion of it that we want to be included in so that we feel like we're part of it as you go through too. There's you didn't talk to us, and it went out, and it's really good, but it's sort of like, oh, cool, right? I mean, so there's that part that kind of integrates the team members in terms of like an esprit de corps also, so that we all feel like we're together because it's actually been done. I'm not saying you're not doing a good job.
no.
I don't think it's that. I think it's the how do we enhance and add scope that we could coordinate with everybody instead of like going, oh, we need somebody separate. And it's not a lot of work, I don't think. I think you're mostly doing it. It's it's the inclusion of the board members independently without breaking sunshine that we're looking
Right.
for.
Can I add that maybe it is a function of timeliness, because the information we work on and getting it out to media might happen obviously with media inquiries it's happening in 2 hours, but a news release might happen in 4 days or 3 days between getting the information, getting it approved, getting it out. And unfortunately, the board meetings being, once a month, it's hard to develop a news release 2 months ahead to hit the board meetings and have all that information be correct. So by the
Have it
time
so
we
we
go to
know.
release it, and if you want to approve it again, and then there's another board meeting, we'd be putting out news months late.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something for
Yeah.
you to think about how we could make something work, right? Think about how we can make something work with the constraints that we have with meetings and sunshine and everything else. And if it's okay with the rest of the HR committee, I would ask you guys to come back after you thought about it, and we won't talk that much about money, but we want to talk about what your ideas are.
Michelle, can I add this? One of the things that I'm very frustrated about is this is one of the hardest working boards that Hart has ever had. When you think about the TAT, for example, that it was the board's initiative based upon a request by Tommy Waters that we do a resolution, and from the resolution, we got the two city council and we did a pig on it, and they did it all. Because quite candidly, they felt that Hart administration was going to wait till the next year, and that we would have lost 6 months minimum of TAT. This board stepped up and did it with the pig. Recovery plan, we kept that pig alive, and then we went into the recovery plan. We did a pig on the recovery plan, we did a report on the recovery plan, and then it went forward. One of the things that I get very frustrated about is that the board has done, to me, an amazing job of filling in the gaps and coming up with specific types of end products, which has moved Hart along. But the board doesn't get recognized for that work. I'm the chair, so I may get more recognition than the rest of the board, but I'm not just one. I'm just one person, I'm just one vote on this board. That's the kind of thing that I feel the board should be given accolades for, which it doesn't, because we don't have anybody there who's going to pump it out for us. So I think that those are the kinds of things that I would like to see done. I want to see the board, individual board members who have done the work, taken the task up. Because like I said, I'm second time as on the board and second time as chair on this board. And I can tell you what a difference it is with this board. And that's what frustrates me, is they take it very seriously, they take the responsibility very seriously, and they also have produced the end product. That's what I want to see. And I want to know how you would address that. How would you level the playing field so that the board is viewed in a light that is positive and that they are actually being credited for the amount of work that they do. And they do a hell of a lot of work. Remember, one of the things that I get asked all the time, and it's kind of humorous, is, you mean to tell me you guys don't get paid? The board for Hart doesn't get paid for all the things you guys have to do? And I said, no, we don't get paid. For some reason, they think we get paid as much as Laurie. And I said, we don't get paid. They know how much Laurie makes because that's been in the news, but we don't get paid. Oh, I stand corrected. I always say Roger gets paid. Ed Sniffen gets paid because they sit ex officio. But I said, other than that, the rest of these board members don't get paid. And people in the public don't realize that. And they don't realize the characteristics, as I say, of the board members who serve. And how the reason why this board is an amazing board to me is because we have such different, quote, skill sets. And we're brought together and we function. We function and we do the end product. And I think that that's something that, if any level of frustration that I have, it's the fact that I get the opportunity to work with an amazing board who don't get paid, even if I tease Roger. I mean, Roger doesn't get paid for the amount of time he has to spend here. And yet, at the same time, people in the public don't realize what they do. And I can say it, because I've served on these boards. And I've served on the Hart board twice. And I've chaired it twice. And I can tell you, matter of fact, I was thinking about it the other day, with all due respect to Laurie, I've been chair longer than Laurie's been executive director. In my 2 stints. But the whole issue is, I want to see, and the reason why I supported the initiative when it first came up, that the board have a PR group, is because I want to see them acknowledged. I would love to see a piece on the board and the members of the board and what they bring and how this project has been able to move forward because of the amazing skill sets that they bring. It's an amazing board. It really is. And I think when we get the 9th member, we'll be another. We'll have a more amazing board because we've had people step forward to do it. And we don't get along. I shouldn't say we don't get along. We don't agree all the time. But we're able to respectfully disagree as the board and move forward. But anyway, that's I like to know when you come back to the HR committee, how you're gonna be able to do that. I think the board, this board, not me, this board is an amazing entity. And I would like the public to know who's been sitting here doing this work for free. I keep saying that because I have friends who are long time government, they know government, they're lobbyists and they're whatever, and it escaped them. This board doesn't get paid to do what they're doing. Thank you.
Kika.
Lori, is there a reason why we contract through HDR and not direct?
No, there's no specific reasons why.
Is there anything that prevents us from contracting directly? Is there a reason why we didn't?
I don't know why.
Was the
board did.
contract in place prior to you or?
No. We were just, as Jennifer was explaining, Rick and I were just getting barraged, and we're not experienced people dealing with the media, and it was like they
I
described.
guess not necessarily contracting with a media firm, but just the reason, is there a reason why it went through HDR versus direct or? Okay. I guess I have a question for the chair. You know, is it a foregone conclusion that the HART Board of Directors has a public relations function, or is that still up for discussion? Because I recall having a discussion. I don't recall us taking a vote as a board on whether or not we're moving forward with a public relations function. Is that, I mean, I see it noticed as HART Board of Directors Public Relations function, and we just went through a discussion about properly noticing agenda items. Have we decided that we have a public relations function as a board?
No, that's what this was. We were trying to decide. We decided that we didn't want to have an independent one. So this agenda item was them briefing us what they do. And of course, it evolved into how are you going to help us, right? But this briefing was to the board of directors of what this function is right now. And
let
we
me-
can talk about the future.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah, the
No,
future
I
was.
just want to clarify what Kika's asking.
Yeah.
Yes, we did vote, and the way we voted, it's in our
That's why it
budget.
came to this committee.
It's in our budget. And so when we voted, we created a line item in our budget, in the board's budget, for the HR position. And the reason I know that is because when our budget went to city council, they asked that specific question.
What's this for, right?
And then it was taken out, but it was put back in. So we technically, like in the legislature, the budget is the primary policy statement of the legislative entity, in this case, our board. So we had as a line item, the public relations function.
If I recall, Chair, the discussion when we approved the budget with that line item in it, I think there was discussion about approving the budget, but having concerns with expending that particular item as a board. And I think several board members expressed concern about actually expending those monies that were allocated and maybe, included in the budget, but not necessarily
Kika,
expended.
as you know, as a former member of the legislature, when you vote that budget and you vote a bill in any way, you can kanalua, you can vote no if you want to, but that budget went through. And too bad Robert's not here, because Robert is the one who did it. So,
Right,
yeah.
Chair. But in this particular case, we're also we're also acting as not just the legislative body, but the administrative body who actually expends those funds. And as you know, the executive branch can choose to expend or not, even though it's in the budget. And I guess my point is that we had discussion that although out of deference to the board, I supported the budget, including that item, I also expressed concern about actually expending those monies and wanted an ongoing continued discussion because, some of the discussion I'm hearing today regarding quick responses and whatnot, we have an executive committee that is specifically tasked with immediate rapid response, specifically to media requests.
But that
And-
committee
and-
also has to comply with Sunshine, which is a
Yes, I
six-day
understand
posting.
that, but we can call special meetings.
Right, but you still have to post 6 days.
I understand
And
that, but
if
my,
you heard them, Kika, they said you can't wait for 5 days.
so Chair, in all due respect, I don't want to get into a debate. I just want to simply offer my comments, like everybody else on this board is offering, without interruption. As far as I understand, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, the board chair is the spokesperson for this board. And I've always respected that, it's a little alarming to me to hear that the media is contacting other board members and those board members may be giving comments directly to the press because I've been contacted as well. And my comment to those people is you contact the board or you contact the board chair. Or if you want to take a statement, you can take my statement from what I say in public hearing. And those people don't call me anymore because I told them that. But my point is, my understanding of our process is that you serve as the spokesman of this board. And if there's something that we need to discuss, we can figure out a mechanism to discuss it. But, as far as hiring, I feel uncomfortable, and I appreciate, Chair, the fact that you show your appreciation for the amount of work that the board members put in. And I do appreciate that. But I feel uncomfortable. My measurement, personally speaking, my measurement of success is that this project is finished on time and under the revised budget.
FFGA.
Right, the revised. I don't need my name in the paper, and quite frankly, I don't want it in the paper. So I feel uncomfortable sitting here listening to discussion about how we're gonna work individual board members' names into the paper. I don't need it. I think what we should do, and I think the point was made, it's why wouldn't we as a board? In fact, I've heard in previous board meetings, everyone here lauding the change in public perception of HART in general. And now I'm hearing the opposite. Well, when did it change? And I'm a little confused because members here have actually lauded the efforts made to change the perception of HART. And I think it's a positive thing, whether it's geared towards the executive director directly, to the mayor, to the chair. I look at it as a HART achievement, similar to what was just stated earlier. I'm just kind of confused why we're even having this discussion. And I just want to make that known because as I said before, I don't see any utility for such a function. You're our spokesperson, Chair. I trust your judgment in what you say in public. And if we have something to discuss, I'm sure we'll figure out a way to do it as a board. But I don't feel that we need a public relations firm to tell you or to message your statements or to form your statements. I trust that you speak on behalf of the board. So I just want to make that known because I'm not sure where this is going to go, but I still don't think that this is really a discussion that we should be having at this point. There's so many other things that are more important to be discussing than public relations for the board members, honestly.
So I agree with a lot of what you just said, Kika, and I disagree with certainly the stuff at the end. If Heart is to be a success, it needs to have some extensions. If it's going to have its extensions, it needs good public relations because the public has to agree with us that we need to build extensions. So that's important. I'm with you. I don't need any flattering. Who's to say that it'd even be flattering if somebody did an article? I'm not personally interested in that, but I am interested in a situation like, we just went through a crisis. We went through a public relations crisis. There was this meme out there that the board was bullying our CEO, which was not the case. The mayor came out in Spotlight and said, no, there wasn't any bullying going on. We should have had you guys are there to watch out for our public relations. You should have said, oh my God, we've got a crisis here. The board's under attack. Let's go and see what we could do. I don't think we saw any of that kind of function going on. So that's my point. I'm not interested in having a PR firm working for the board. I don't think we need that. But when it comes to what's actually out there in the media, then I do expect to see a response. And I don't think we weren't well served in that situation. And so what I'd like to see is some sort of mechanism to ensure that in the future, that when you see that kind of bad PI, that you're coming maybe to Cindy or maybe to the chair, and we're working on a strategy to deal with it, especially when it's based on incorrect facts and miscommunication. And I just don't think you guys were there for us.
Anthony, just in response, in all due respect, I think this particular instance that you're referring to, what made it special was that in this case, our spokesperson was involved in that specific instance. So I believe, Chair, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you recused yourself from the discussions, right? So, but if it were something that were levied against anybody else on this board, I think the board chair as spokesperson would have made a statement of some sort. Now, maybe what should have happened, that didn't, but maybe what should have happened in that case is that the board chair designated a second person as spokesperson to, if that were the wish of the board, to address any negative concerns that were coming out of that particular issue. But it wasn't done. And we're past it. So we got to move on. But that, there's ways that we could have handled it better that maybe we didn't.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Kika, is that we have some kind of a mechanism to ensure that there is a formal means of communicating with our board secretary so that we can address these issues in the future. I'm not interested in dredging up the past. I want a mechanism for the future.
Right, and I do think that there is a conflict of interest if you try to put it into the scope of what's in Heart, because there's two entities, right? But, Colleen?
No, what I was going to respond to was Kika's statement. Yes, the board chair is the spokesperson for Heart, but like the executive director, the board chair can't speak for Heart unless it's something that's authorized by the board. It's got to be a clear policy of the board. So I think that's true. I can speak for Heart, for the board, on issues that are clearly within whatever the board has said or the board has done. But it's not necessarily true that the board chair can then speak. And the difficulty is both as when Laurie speaks and when I speak, it's already attributed to Heart. It isn't that, and even if I say this is my position as an individual, because the board has not authorized this position, and I've gone before, for example, City Council and said that this is, and I think Joey knows that this is not the official position of Heart, because I'm here without basically the board having voted on a particular thing, which makes it difficult because of Sunshine, that the board's position should be one that's authorized by the majority of the board members. I understand your position that you may have voted for the budget, but you feel that it's an action after that as to whether it's expended or not. I think that's nothing that we don't take another vote on the expenditure. What we did was we said, okay, let's just have this discussion, see what the board wants to do, because if the board decides it doesn't want to do it and takes a vote, affirmative vote, that it won't do it, then that's fine. But right now, as far as I understand the way the process is, We have passed it, it's part of our budget, but we will expend it as an entity. That's why it was delegated to this committee to make the decision. I agree with Anthony. One of the things that we do need, and the reason why I recall that it even became an issue on the budget, was because of the promoting the fact of quote unquote Ala Moana and beyond, and what were the affirmative things that the board as an entity would be doing. And that's why it was voted on originally, my recollection, as to why it became part of our budget. So it is part of our budget. If the HR committee and eventually to the board, you don't want to expend the funds, because you would affirmatively expend the funds, then fine. That's the decision. But that's the reason why it was delegated to this committee to have this discussion and what it would do. So I think that Michelle's recommendation that Pan Communication comes back with a proposal, at least that there's something affirmative to vote up or down on, and what that would involve from their hearing of the discussion here, that we should proceed in that light. And that I think it's premature to cut it off now, because clearly the other members of the committee, I think, are interested in hearing what they have to propose and where we go from it. I'm not a member of HR, so, it's for the rest of the committee to decide what it wants to do.
Chair, this is Natalie.
Yeah, I don't know. I seem to be digging myself deeper, but I don't know, Chair. I mean, I think maybe we should have a discussion of whether or not this is even within our authority. My understanding of our authority is the FFGA. And if we're talking about funds being expended to explore Ala Moana and beyond, which I'm not opposed to, I've always been a supporter, then I think we should seriously discuss whether or not it's within our authority. If it's not within the scope that was adopted by the city council, not necessarily just the FFGA, but the project scope, yes, the project scope that was adopted by the city council.
Well, I'm relying on the fact that, if you look at the charter, which I have somewhere here, the charter gives this board the concept of develop, which is part of the responsibility of the board. And it's to determine the policies for the development of the fixed guideway system. And the concept is we have the right to develop. And it doesn't say the fixed guideway system as FFGA is approved. It says the fixed guideway system. And I think that that's for the board to determine, because the board is the policy-making body.
I'm not challenging you, but I think it probably could use a deeper dive than just reading what you just read. Because I think the project scope could be defined differently.
Well, I think that we have not adopted anything, except that we have created a PIG. And the PIG is going to explore this. And when the PIG decides that it's ready to basically disband and give a report to the board, then the board then adopts or doesn't adopt, whatever it is. And at that point, if you don't agree, you can vote no. But having said that, this is our process. And we've had the PIG, and the PIG has been formed, and the PIG has been functioning, and that's where we wait to see what the PIG does. I'm not on that PIG. So, and I think Roger and
Natalie?
Thank you. I'll try to keep it short since I know you have another meeting. So I appreciate the chair's comments about her particular frustrations. I think that is the first time I've heard anything along those lines. And as a method of addressing at least part of her concerns, it would be easy to include in media releases, the volunteer board did such and such. And that way you incorporate the concerns about misunderstanding by the public that somehow we are all paid to be in this position. If the board were to have a separate consultant, I think a lot of these issues with respect to the Sunshine Law would still be there. There's really not much of a way, I think, that we can get around that due to the just the way the media works and the timing, the 2 to 3 hour turnaround or the 3 to 4 day turnaround for press releases. It just doesn't work with trying to get a board meeting together or even a committee meeting because of the 6-day agenda notice requirement. So I think that Kika's comments about the chair speaking on behalf of the board is very reasonable. I think that's what people expect. And whether the chair has to say, I'm saying this in my individual capacity without having had a meeting, I think that's also reasonable. The other thing I wanted to mention is that with respect to this quote unquote crisis we had, I understand there are differing opinions by board members of what happened. But if you go back and read some of the comments on the news articles, people made up their own mind based on what they saw at the meetings. Those were recorded meetings. And so, as Peng had said, you can change something that's not correct. But if you're trying to change something that occurred in a meeting, it's not going to work. The last thing I wanted to comment is that several times during this meeting, I heard phrases or comments about the board sort of being separate from the Hart administration. And really, the public doesn't see it that way. I know, I think his name is Kevin from Peng mentioned that we're just one. So when Hart is in the headlines, it's the board and the administration together. So those are my comments, Chair, and thank you for having this discussion.
Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, I really didn't want to enter this conversation, to be honest, and I tried to sit on my hands most of the time, but a couple of comments. Number one, I've stated in the past that I would not be in favor of the board having a separate contract for public relations. And I'll reiterate that just now because it's come up again. And I do think that I would also like to offer, some looking at what Peng has done with their contract. I think that generally, they've done a very good job of working to provide a good picture of what's going on in Hart. And I think partially as a result of that, and I think only partially, I think the public has generally got a better outlook of what Hart's trying to do and has a better view of Hart. And I think that that's a good thing. But mostly that I just don't see that the appropriateness of a commission or a board seeking to have their own contract for public relations.
I didn't think that was on the agenda. I thought we'd put that to rest at our last meeting. I thought that's why I invited Pang to come. We've already got a PR team. Why would we hire a separate one? I thought there was general agreement at the last meeting on that. I'm not sure that issue is on the agenda today,
Yeah,
Roger.
I think we were talking, I think the only thing, it did come up today because it was sort of like, well, how do I do this? So what I'm going to suggest is we give you guys an action, okay? You heard what we said. You kind of got a squishy view of it, right? What is in scope? Okay, what is in scope? I think most of what we're asking for kind of is already in scope. It might not be costed, but it's kind of in scope. The how you would do it might not be as clear for us, and it might take, in addition to A through L, it might take some more wording there, okay? But I think it's kind of in scope. There might be some things that are not in scope. What are they? Help us understand what they are. And that's what I think I want to ask you guys for. It is difficult if the board wants to get their own contract. It would have to be a competitive procurement. It'd have to do all of these things, blah, blah, blah. Saying helping us understand what you believe is actually in scope, but you may not have detailed it in that way, and you may not have acted on it yet, maybe even, that would help us. And it's sort of like, well, yeah, we think it's in scope to what we're doing to help Hart, but you know, we don't have the resources to do that right now. And that could turn into either a trade of what the resources are and do this, not this, or it could be we want you to keep doing what you're doing, but we also want you to do, you know, K through Z or whatever, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, like what we're going to ask you to come back with, so that we can make a decision on does it make sense? Or, you know, if it's already in scope and it's like, well, yeah, we just didn't get to it, sort of like phase 2, because we were so focused on like doing these kinds of things. But yeah, you're right. It would help to do these other things. It would help us all, right? We'd like to hear that. And we'd like to support you in doing that. And I think that's kind of like what we're talking about in terms of a PR function. It's not really to like make the board look better. It's to make Hart look better, but we want to involve the board in some of these things. Does that make sense to you guys, what I'm asking for?
It does, but I also want to caution you based on what Roger and Kiko both said. How does this look to the public? What are the optics of you guys feeling it necessary to go out and really focus on your own public relations versus a One Hart Ohana public relations?
Right, and that's why I think what's in scope is kind of important, because it's one Ohana this way, right? It's just, you know, maybe having an additional resource at a senior level to help you shape, speak, you know, I mean, like, Anthony's a great speaker. I mean, like, I've seen him on TV. Like, I would love to get him in front of, you know, like PBS, you know, like one of those things or something. You're like, I know he might not want to do it, but like, maybe we could twist his arm, right? Kind of thing. So it's kind of like that. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And I hear all the concerns and I want to address those, because I don't want it to look like, oh my God, the board like got bad press and like now we want a PR firm.
Well, and you got to remember, we were brought on because the perception of Hart was really in the toilet, you know, and then they got new leadership. We came on to help, and that was why we came. But it wasn't like, let's make Hart look amazing. It was, let's correct misconceptions. Let's introduce the Hart to the community again and show them all the things that are going on. So I do caution you that, you know, obviously all the reporters are probably watching this right now, you know, if you go out there and like, well, we need this much money because we want to make the board look better. I don't know. It could be it could come across poorly.
Well, you're the PR
Can I put this? Let me put this another way. Let me put this another way. We're working. Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
We're working in earned media. That means this isn't guaranteed. Just because you say you want coverage of something, it doesn't equal getting coverage. Right. So it's earned media. So it's one thing to share news with media on a milestone. It's news, right? So we have to be careful about what you're going after and what your goals are. And that's why we're asking, we need to be really clear what the goals are for what you're after. Because just saying, I want to get profiles on board members is very different than putting out a news release that we fixed the hammerhead cracks.
Or
right?
this PIG report is being released.
Right.
That would be an excellent thing to push out to the media.
And you might love to see that, but we can't guarantee the media is going to run a story on the PIG being released.
Blah, blah, blah. You know, when you guys finally give Lori her assessment, and I'm like, dude, like, we voted on it and approved it. She got it already. Right? That's what I responded with. And I gave Colleen a copy because it was just kind of like, well, we already voted on it. It was in public. Did you not notice what that thing was? Right? And they're like, oh, I didn't notice what that thing was. Oh, I guess I better go look for it. And I'm like, okay, maybe that should have gone to you. Maybe I should have contacted you. I mean, like, we don't really work with you. Right? So I think it's kind of in your scope. You might not have time for it, but like, that's the kind of question I got. It was like, dude, like, we already had that. It was on an agenda like 2 months ago. It was approved.
Exactly.
All the time.
Yeah.
We have reporters after a board meeting.
I have nobody to talk to about it.
Yeah. Situation, something like that, boom, Cindy to them, boom, it's done.
Yeah, but I just answered
That's
it.
not quite what you're asking them to do. That they already do that.
I think we got another problem.
Yeah.
Kika touched upon it because Kika said, why HDR?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's because if they do it the way they did it with both Lori and Rick Keene did, they don't do procurement. If it comes to us, and if we do it, we got to do bid. We got to do procurement. So what the public should want to know is, all right, maybe what we need to do is we need to make this public, because that's one of the reasons why I have such a thing about the HDR format and the consultants.
Because you just add on anything.
You add on, and you hire whoever you want. But if we were to do it, we would have to procure. We would have to procure. And Kika's right when he said, why did you go? And the reason why is because you don't have to go procurement. You don't have to go out for bid. You can just hire them and put them on a consultancy without having to do it. What was the difference between that and what's his name? Robbins guys were all criticized because they had all these people in-house, but they were hard employees. Whether you're Joyce and Bill Brennan and all of them, they were hard employees. They were in hard. They were like Joey.
And they also had HDR, probably about 7 staffers in Joey's group.
In Joey's
HDR
group.
employees.
But okay, so but that's the thing. Does the public know that? Does the public want to know that? Do they want to know? If we were to do something, you would have to go procurement, because we are governed by a different set of rules. Just like we have to comply with Sunshine,
Actually, the public does.
the Hart administration doesn't. So when you have PAN communication through HDR, they don't have to
Public
procure.
does now.
They don't have to put it.
Wait, the public does
No, they
know.
don't procure.
The scope was so broad. The scope was so broad that you could just add that stuff in or take it out.
They
Or
published our contract in
HDR,
2023 in the news.
HDR, but they're
talked
not,
about
they're not by public procurement.
2023.
They're not doing
They're
procurement.
they're in HDR stuff. HDR, right? Right. The scope is within HDR. Okay, Anthony.
No, HDR just gives whoever they want.
It's true.
I just, the first thing I want to emphasize for all who are watching is that what we are not talking about here is putting lipstick on a pig. We're not trying to go out there and look for good public relations to mask a disastrous operation, whatever. On the contrary, I think what's happening with Hart at the moment is a feel-good story. It is a good story. It's a good story because of the work that Laurie and her team are doing, which has been incredible. It's also a good story because of the work that this board is doing, as Colleen has mentioned, and we should be treating it as one. My issue is simply that up until now, I haven't seen the PR function addressing the component of the work that we're doing as part of the Hart Ohana, and we need to come up with a mechanism to do that. I think we've been around that several times. I think we could leave it at this point, but I do want to make sure that the media who are watching, we are not at this, certainly not at this point, talking about expending money to make the board look good. That's not what this conversation is all about.
Anybody else have any input? Do you think you have enough information to come back? Because part of me is thinking almost everything we're kind of talking about and complaining about is probably in scope and you just haven't really, I mean, you maybe sometimes you address it, but maybe you just haven't had time and resources to address it. I think you have the scope for it. You have like a pretty open scope here.
Can I ask?
Right?
Can I ask? In addition to media inquiries, in addition, what else are you looking?
Potential interview, positive interviews, to inviting board members to public events that we might not know about, right? Kind of things. Like when my board meets, you don't know where I live. So,
Wait, what did you say? Inviting board members to public events?
Like which, what do you?
What?
Let me make it clear.
That we don't.
We are very reactive. So when I do interviews, the requests are coming to us. They aren't proactively going out to, hey, can Lori talk it?
Yeah.
We're reactive. So are you
Yeah.
asking them to go talk to the media to have interview you
No, I'm
guys? on
saying
different
like if
things?
you're
Yeah.
going, I think I brought this up before, and I'm like, I live in Manoa. So we don't know where everybody lives, but like we could figure out where everybody lives, and you could get a senior person to go with Lori maybe, or at least invite them because she's already going to the thing.
Wait, what
What are you talking about?
When the media calls, usually it's something that they've heard about. Okay, the train.
I'm going to the neighborhood board to talk about, whatever. That's not a media ask you to do that.
When I have speaking engagements,
Speaking
you want to be
engagements.
invited to go with
You
me.
want to, yeah.
So like yesterday, I just addressed the Ala Moana Rotary Club. I was requested to speak.
Yeah.
I can ask them, can I bring a board member with?
Joey's team handles
And Joey's team now handles that. Marissa really.
Yeah.
See,
That's not
but that would not be a
That's not us.
paying
I'm looking for
communications.
specific
Yeah.
Details.
Yes,
I'm
we are.
asking you to listen to what we said and help write those specific details.
I know, that's why I'm asking you the questions on what the specifics are, because we have media inquiries you'd like help with, so we can develop a
that.
process for answering media inquiries. You'd like to be looped into news releases from what I hear, right? So we need to find a way to include the board, namely, more specifically in news releases.
And make sure they know that it's an unpaid board position.
Yes, unpaid board.
That's one of the key messages. And then the things like your pig findings, those kind of the working group things, when you have that milestone, if it's not related to them, we would need to know those things too, because we would want to let the public know about that through media. When you come back and you've completed a study, or you have a next steps that you want the world to know about, then we could do that too. But I think it is a very slippery slope we're talking about, because we don't want to be out there like, oh, look at this board member, they've done this and this and this and this, because then it becomes, that's very self-serving in a way. And we don't do that with them, So I think that would be, so I'm trying to, the reason we're asking all these questions is we want really clear direction from you, so we don't come
this
back.
sort of like you mentioned the hammerhead cracks. There's like a little crisis. There's like a little problem. We formed a pig. The problem got solved.
Yeah.
The hammerhead thing got a press release. I mean, it's sort of similar, except for its policy, right? So help us figure out how
Policy
to do
doesn't
that.
I'm not going to, oh, never mind.
No, go
I
ahead.
don't think it's going to be picked up by media.
I'm just going to, I'm going to go back to my
might not be
comment
picked up,
about
it's
earned
just-
media.
But at least I put it out, okay? At least I put it out. It might not get picked up, but at least I put it out, and it's not like something that somebody has to
Policy.
watch the board meeting to hear what happened. If somebody just clicks on the news releases, it's third down. You might not have seen it, but if you're looking for something else, you might be able to see it in there. And it's a part of the historical record, right? It's part of the historical record of all the official press releases that kind of went out. And some of the work that gets done is actually kind of like the pigs, especially, it's a good example of, it's kind of like a little crisis with, like the train gonna catch on fire in the bottom, we gotta add something to it.
I think those are two completely different things. Policy, paying its firm to go out to report on policy that's already being televised, versus stay away from that third rail because you could get hurt. We solved the problem with the hammerheads. We solved the problems with the tracks. That is completely something technical that the public, it goes right back to the reputation of Hart. I think that's technical versus policy is two different things.
It is, but I don't see why you can't do something like news release, media calendar advises meeting.
I'm just saying public perception of what we're spending tax dollars on. That's
Yeah,
all.
because if we're going to be pushing stuff out that we, in our professional opinion, think the media are not going to pick up because it's boring, then we just wasted money, basically. And we want to be,
What
good
are you
stewards.
trying to tell us? You don't think that it's
I
required?
don't think policy changes are newsworthy. No, I think pig findings are newsworthy.
That's kind of what I was saying. The pig
Okay.
findings were newsworthy,
Yeah.
and then I heard Laurie saying, "No, it's not."
No.
It depends what you're putting out.
Yeah.
Policy.
If it's a policy pig finding, it's one thing. It just depends on what we would have to see what the news was
I mean, if
to
you look
provide
at it,
you
if it's a
good
policy
counsel.
thing and we're going over our rules and we take authority away from Lori or give her more, I think that it's newsworthy.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that those things are newsworthy. If I say, okay, well, because I can give you authority or take it away. If I decide you don't have that authority anymore,
Yes, you folks did that prior. We should have made
right?
a
I think that's a
press
big
release on
deal.
that.
Yeah, that is when we
Right? That's
agree.
a big freaking deal. And so policy could be very important because that's what the board does. We haven't finished our thing. I mean, we haven't finished that pig, right? We're still working on that. We haven't finished all of the things that are in our rules. I don't know when we're going to work on it because we've got so many other things going on. But those are things that examples, and they're very infrequent. And I think that's the challenge, right? It's not like we're looking for you to do this all the time. These are relatively infrequent things that might happen a handful of times a year that are important to the board. We think it's kind of in scope to what you do now that we see the scope. It just might not be listed on there, but it falls under proactive media relations program, clearly, right? And I don't think we're asking you to do a lot because I don't think that the board wants a lot of public relations, but it needs something, right? It needs something and it needs to be kind of included. And that's what we're struggling with is, yeah, I mean, we're not asking you to do something every single time we talk. We're just asking you to pick up the big deal things and realize what's coming in is a big deal to us or what we need to go out is a big deal to us and help us with that.
Can I ask a question that, unrelated to this, but it was your intention initially to have a 12 p.m.
I
hard
got
stop?
my husband to.
Yeah, but I have a 1 o'clock important meeting. I got to decide whether I'm going to go to or not. What's our intention for following this meeting? Is there another meeting, or have we exceeded our time frame already?
I want to do the other meeting for at least 10 minutes, so I was gonna like defer the last item until next month. Can we do that? Can we? We can do whatever you want. Yeah, I think.
We should probably let these people go. I think
We're
we've
gonna let you
grilled
go.
Pang Communications.
We're gonna let you go. Think about it for a little while and then call me. And me and Anthony can maybe like help you shape it if there's some real giant questions or anything. But the two of us might be able to like help you with, and there might be some things that we get stuck on and say, yeah, that's something that we need to figure out how to do. We don't know how to do that, but we know how to do these other things, right? And maybe we can agree on like 80% of it, and maybe that's where we are, right? Like I said, I think some of this is, I mean, almost all of it is really in proactive media relations program. It's just that we didn't really feel like we were that much a part of it before. We just got to figure out how to be part of it. You know? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
inviting us.
Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Yeah, and it was really nice meeting you. I mean,
Thank you, Michelle.
You're articulate, you understand what you're saying, and more than anything, when we recognize that there's challenges for the board in PR, you also recognize that, right? Like it's not that's not smart. That's not what you want to do. I like that. I like you to come back and tell us those things. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to defer the last item to next month, and unless anyone has any other discussion points, Sandy, I'm sorry I made you stay. Just for your information, Sandy, that discussion was, we kept it on because I heard from Lori and I heard from the board members. Oh, Sandy's back there. You know the last item? Last time we had it, I heard from Lori and you, and I heard from the board members, but we kind of didn't hear from like the employees. So it was more like a discussion of, should we put out a anonymous survey? I mean, you can buy, hotlines or anonymous surveys online for, by the month, basically. And just get people's input just so that we can listen to it and just read through it. I think it's worth it to do that. So,
Are we deferring or not deferring?
we're gonna defer.
Okay.
We're gonna defer. But I just wanted to tell you what it was, so you're not
that'd
like,
be good if we knew, like, we get these drafts and nobody talks to us. so
Nobody
we just
knows what
don't-
it is.
We don't know what,
Right.
that's why, even the one above, I didn't know it was to talk about what we wanted to do in the future. So it would be better if people could talk to us about what's being put on the agenda, because I had no
I
idea.
thought last time, especially this public relations function, this is what
That I
when we
knew.
asked Pang to come
That
back.
one I knew, but the numbers 3 and 5, I didn't know what you were asking. So we just. I
Three
thought we just did
personnel
the table
vacancy
again.
update, you didn't know what that was?
What? Yeah, I thought it was just a table, but you introduced it as, oh, this is for you to tell me what you want us to do, how you want us to present it, but now I know. So now, by January, you want the new org chart and what we're gonna propose. But I'm just saying, when these agendas are put together, nobody talks to us. We just get the draft like everyone else, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, thank you for staying, and the meeting is adjourned.